Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Parama Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarva Gurubhyo Namaha. Before we begin, we always remember our teachers. So we're continuing on with our discussion of Mumuksupadi by Pillai Lokacharya and with a commentary by Manavala Munigal. And we're in the third section of the book, which is the Sharma Sloka Prakaranam, talking about the Sharma Sloka, Krishna Sharma Sloka, the final instruction by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 1866. So far, we have discussed fully the first half of the sloka, Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. The second part of the sloka, Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyo Mokshayishyami Masuchaha. We're in the middle of discussing that. So previously we discussed in the second half of the sloka, Aham Tva and Sarva Papebhyo. Last time we discussed Sarva Papebhyo. Now the word Sarva Papebhyo means all sins. And we understood the extent that the different schools of Sri Vaishnavism, the northern school and the southern school, understand the word Sarva Papebhyo to mean. What it means, all sins. So if you need to go back and look, that's a very, very important distinction as to what is a sin, what is considered a sin in Sri Vaishnavism, especially in the southern school and the northern school also. Right? May not be the same as what other Hindus or other Vaishnavas accept as sin. Right? Some of the things which are a little bit amazing is that we consider things to be sins not only if they're papas or sinful, but even the punyas, even things that are performed, auspicious things that are performed, are considered sins because they give us a reaction that keep us in this material world. So not only that, but even thinking. There are some other things also. We went through many things. Even thinking that property or surrender to the Lord is the means is somewhat sinful. Even thinking that we have to perform another property after we perform property one time, doing property twice, or what's called prayaschitta property. Property for even unknowing or even deliberate and knowing sins after property, to do property again. That is also considered a sin by the southern school of Sri Vaishnavas. So that last lesson about Sarva Papebhyo, very important. Now we come to the word Mokshayishyami. Mokshayishyami is a verb, and it's in a future tense. And as those who are studying Sanskrit will know, ami, when we have ami at the end of a verb, it means I, right? That I refers to Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna is saying Mokshayishyami. He's promising us in the future, he will give us liberation. Moksha means liberation. He will take us to liberation. So let us see now the actual in-depth meaning and esoteric meaning of the word Mokshayishyami. So let's go to the main text. So after this, he presents the fourth word in the second half of the Sharma Sloka. So we have Sarva Dharma Prityaja Mamikam Sharam Bhaja. It's the first half. Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyo. These are three words, the three first words in the second half of the Sharma Sloka. So this is the fourth word, Mokshayishyami. So Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyo Mokshayishyami. Right? We have very few words left. So Mokshayishyami is the word. It's made up of a base and a stem of the verb, which we add the future tense to. By when we see Ishya, we understand it to be future tense, and Ami we understand it to be first person singular. Okay, so what does Mokshayishyami basically mean? It means I will make it so that you are released. I will cause you to be released. It's a causal form. It's causal. Right? I will cause you to be released. I will be the cause of your release. Right. This means I will make it so that you are freed from these what we just discussed before, sarva papebhyo, all these sins and all these karmas which is keeping you here in this material world. After this, he reveals the meaning of the causal form of the verb. Okay, so this is going to get a little bit technical here. The causal form, which is called in Sanskrit mik, right? This is a Paninian term, mik, indicates that neither you nor I need do anything. Neither you nor I would need do anything. They will disappear automatically. Anantaye. Right. By the causal ending, Yishyami, the Lord reveals, I myself will not be the active agent, Swayam Karta, but the instigating agent, Prayojaka Karta. Okay, so the word Karta means the doer. The Swayam Karta means I am the self-doer. I am doing it. The Prayojaka Karta means the instigating Karta. He will get it going. The instigator, who will cause you to be released. Therefore, I don't have to make any effort for this. The Lord is saying, I don't have to make any effort for this, nor do you have to ask for it. So neither you nor I have to make effort for this. Right. So again, we think about the mother monkey and the baby monkey. Both the mother and the baby are performing efforts. The baby monkey, the baby monkey is grasping hold of the mother's back, right? So in order for that relationship to work, both the mother and the baby have to make efforts. In the idea of the cat, the mother cat, the baby kitten doesn't have to perform any effort. So here it's again emphasized that we don't have to perform any effort. There is no effort that we perform. Even our property itself is not an effort. Remember, it's simply a mental realization of a fact that we are the property, we are the slave, we are the servant of the Lord. Therefore, I don't have to make any effort for this, nor do you have to ask for it. Because of the grandeur of that royal lineage you have gained by submitting to me, upon seeing you, they will be afraid and will soon be, as it is said, gone away with the wind, disappeared. Okay, so there's a footnote here. And this quotation, which he's quoting here, comes from Tiruvandadi, verse 54 of the Nalaya Vidyuprabandha. That is, they will spontaneously leave. We're talking about all the sins and reactions to all the sins. They will spontaneously leave and go away, such as no one can know how they left. He clarifies the import of what he has revealed in this way. So, Sutra 256. That is, can the things which have come about as a result of my disfavor remain if I become gracious? Sins are not things which rise up spontaneously like a castor plant out on a garbage heap, right? So sometimes we see there's some garbage heap or there's some hill of dirt or something like that, and the weeds just grow up. These castor plants are like weeds; they just grow up, and they seem to grow up spontaneously. So sins are not things that rise up spontaneously and bite one on the throat like a snake. That is, they are not visible. Since the actions of a Chaitana or soul, sentient being, that performs, vanish in an instant, they are destroyed at that very moment. Even the one who did them out of his ignorance will simply forget. But the inherently omniscient one, right, meaning the Supreme Lord, who remains cognizant of all, omitting nothing, at the proper time and without fail, will weigh those actions and cause the Chaitana, the living being, to experience their results. So this means, can those things which have come about as a result of my disfavor remain with you any longer once I have graciousness or favor, anugraha, the opposite of disfavor, nigraha, towards you. So once the Lord has showered his grace upon us, once we have come to the realization that we're his property, his servant, his slave, he's accepted us. He's therefore graced us by accepting us. Right? Can these things any longer affect us? And the answer is no. He reveals the main idea in saying that they will go away automatically. I will make these very sins experience the sufferings you have endured from time immemorial because of them. Since time immemorial, sins bearing miseries have come and overwhelmed you, making you tremble to see them. I will make it so that these very sins will tremble, their bowels burning, when they see you endowed with the grandeur of the royal lineage of those who have taken me as a refuge, right? So when you link yourself to the lineage means the other Vaishnavas who have also taken refuge of the Supreme Lord, then it will be as though these sins become afraid themselves of that they tremble themselves. And here we have another quotation. This quotation is from the Tani Charamam, which is another page 147, which is another book, another one of these esoteric grantha rahasyas, rahasya granthas, or esoteric books by Pillai Lokacharya, which has to do with the Charma Sloka. It's about the Charma Sloka only, that book. Making them go away spontaneously implies that they go away so completely that they do not seem like something which we previously possessed and then lost. That is, even if they are remembered in the light of our true nature, swabhavika vesha. Swabhavika vesha means like the apparel or the covering of a person, right? Swabhavika means according to our own nature, right? Our true nature, even if they're remembered, because at the time of liberation, at the time of moksha, we know everything, we can understand everything. So there's no blockage to our knowledge. So naturally, we'll also know about all the sins that we've performed, that we'll know about all these things. But it will seem as if they were like dreams, which came upon us and then passed away. No misery will follow from remembering them. Okay, so this is an important point. The important point is that sometimes in this material world, we do some action, and then we dream about it later, or we contemplate it later, or we have regrets about it later, or we even don't have regrets about it later, but we think about it later, the thing that we did, either with pride or with regret, right? With some emotion comes to us when we think about our past, like that. Here, he's saying that even though we will know all of the sins that we perform, right, after we attain moksha, still, these will not affect us, right? They will seem like dreams, but they will not affect us. We will have no misery. So there'll be no nightmares of all the sins that we committed. This which Pillai Lokacharya himself in his Tani Charamam ought to be contemplated in this context. He reveals the meaning implied by the first person form of moksha yishyami. Okay, so now he's given some understanding of the word moksha yishyami, of offering of the Lord causing us to attain liberation. And now he's going to specifically talk about the ending army, which shows that it is one person only who gives us liberation, who causes us liberation, and that is the Lord himself. So before we look at the first person form of moksha yishyami, let's look at P.B. Anangacharya's commentary and see what he says. Okay, so now moksha yishyami is explained. There's a slightly different numbering system here in the Mumuksupadi Sarata Dipika of P.B. Anangachara Kanchipuram. So he starts off, Mokshishami is the Sutra 263 according to him. So now Mokshishami is explained. That is, I will free you from these sins. He says that for this, neither do I have to take any effort, nor do you have to pray for it. Right? Most importantly, we have to remember here that the difference between another difference between the northern and southern schools of Sri Vaishnavism is that the northern schools say that, and in fact some other schools of Vaishnavism say that we need to request, we need to pray, we need to cry out to the Lord to save us. Right? Again, we have that example of a drowning person who is crying out to the lifeguard to save him. Like that. So if the lifeguard doesn't hear that cry, if the person doesn't ask for help, the lifeguard will not save him. Like that. Of course, we understand if he's a perfect lifeguard, if he's a very experienced lifeguard, he will even see that the person is suffering, beginning to drown, and he will save that person. So the southern schools, the Tengalaya-acharyas, right? The Tengalaya-acharyas, their idea is that. Their doctrine is that no crying out for help, no appeal to the Lord is actually necessary. That is, we are the property of the Lord. We are the servant of the Lord. We are the slave of the Lord. That is our natural position. We don't need to appeal to him to get back to that position. We are already in that position. It's simply a matter of us realizing that. So, of course, there's the other argument that Vedanta Deshika and the Northern Kanchipuram Acharyas say, is that their argument is if you don't have to call out to the Lord, if you don't have to cry out for help and to be saved, then everybody would be saved because nobody's calling out to be saved. So why doesn't the Lord save everybody? Well, in fact, the Lord says, everyone does follow his path in all respects, and eventually everybody will go to moksha. Everybody will be saved. Okay, but anyway, so these are the arguments back and forth. That some people think that one has to cry out, one has to pray to be saved, otherwise one won't be saved, and so other people say that you don't have to. Right. So he says that for this, neither do I have to take any effort, nor do you have to pray for it. Due to the greatness of your surrender to me, they will fear you, leave you on your own. So because of the greatness of surrender, of property to the Lord, or taking the Lord as the only means to liberation, all of these sins, which include papas and all these other and punyas and all these other things, right? They themselves will be afraid to approach you, to affect you, and they will leave on their own. This is seen in the fact that he did not say, aham te sarva papani niha nishyami, but instead said, tva sarva papebhyo mukshayishyami. Right? So there's a slight difference in the way the Sanskrit is there. And so we're not going to that because it's got to do with Sanskrit grammar and the way that the Sanskrit sentence is structured here. So let's continue on. But the way that Krishna said it indicates what was just explained. So the Chaitanya who does these sins will forget them, because the Chaitanya or the living being, the Jivatma, who does these sins will forget them because he is ignorant, right? So we have committed so many sins over different lifetimes, but we forget all of those things, birth after birth, because we again get covered with Maya, we get covered with illusion in every birth. And even we might forget in this birth some sin that we performed previously. Of course, once we reach liberation, we don't forget anything, we know everything. The Lord, who knows everything and who forgets nothing, is the one who gives out the fruits of these acts at the appropriate times. These come out of his act of handing out punishment. He is asking, if these come out of my nigraha rupa, nigraha means his blaming us, his form of blaming us, would they stay when I put out the opposite form, my anugraha rupa, or my grace, when I put out my grace or my loving forgiveness to the souls? Will these things stay? No, they can't stay, obviously. They can't stay. That is, the Chaitanya, or the living being, the Jivatman, was afraid of these for a long time. He was afraid of these for a long time. Even Arjuna was afraid that over many, many births he had committed so many sins. We're afraid when the Lord explained to him in the Bhagavad Gita, previously, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and still Arjuna was thinking, because of this burden of sins that I have from this life and previous lives, since time immemorial, somehow or other, I'm afraid that these things will be an impediment. They'll be a virodi. They will be the thing that stops me from fully attaining liberation by these different paths of effort, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, or even Prapati, even surrender. Now he will make them fear the Chaitanya and leave him. So the Supreme Lord will say, these sins will actually fear the living being. But which kind of living being? That living being that has his proper consciousness that the Lord is his master, that he is the property, the servant, the slave of the Lord. And thus, all of these sins will automatically leave him, right? Because his consciousness is changed. His consciousness is changed. He now understands his true swabhavika nature, his true nature. So, the Lord says, for all these times, you were thinking that you owned your acts and their fruits, right? Throughout all these lives in the material world, we thought that we owned ourselves, that we are our own masters, that whatever we did, the fruits would accrue to us, either good or bad. Therefore, I left you alone, right? This is, again, looking at the Upanishads, we have the image of the green tree with two birds in the green tree, two green birds. The tree is the body, and the two birds are the Jivatman, the individual soul, and the super soul, the Paramatma, the Supreme Lord. So the Supreme Lord is looking on, and he's seeing that the other bird is simply trying to eat fruits of the tree, which means the fruits of this life, right? So in this material world. So sometimes the fruits are sour, sometimes the fruits are sweet, etc. So sometimes we experience happiness, sometimes we experience pain, we experience sorrow, right? We experience distress. So these things come naturally. And Lord Krishna says this, Sitoshna Sukha Dukkha Da. He says that happiness and distress are like summer and winter. Like now it's summer, and soon it will become winter. So when we're in summer, we feel hot. When we're in winter, we feel cold. Naturally, we know when it's winter, we know summer again will come. When it's summer, we know that winter will again come. So happiness and distress, heat and cold, right? Summer and winter, they follow one after the other automatically in this material world. So, therefore, I left you alone as one who is doing things for himself. So when we are doing things for ourselves in this material world, the Lord leaves us alone, and that the karma, the idea of karma, the law of karma kicks in, and we suffer or enjoy the fruits of our actions. Now that you understood that you are my body, that the souls and the universe are the body of God, Sharira Shariri Bhava. This is the idea that the Lord pervades from outside and also from inside. So we are like the body of God. God is therefore within us. He is completely controlling and supporting us, just like our soul is supporting the body, our material body. We are the body of God, and He is supporting and controlling us from within, right? So now you've understood that you, the Jivatman, the soul, is my body. you're my body, and therefore I am your Lord. Right? So when you have the body and soul, understand the soul controls the body. So if we're the body, in this analogy, if we're the body, if the universe and the souls are the body of God, that means he controls us just like our soul controls our body, right? If we understand ourselves to be the soul, the body, then God, and God is the soul, then he controls us, right? So now that you've understood that you're my body and that you're Lord, and that I'm your Lord, and surrendered to me, and you've surrendered to me, I will not tell you to do yourself what it takes to remove these sins. These sins are like dirt, which is ignorance, accumulated on you, who is my body. Will I not do what is necessary to clean my body? Right? When we get dirty, we go and we take a bath, right, in order to clean our body. So when God's body becomes dirty, does he not cleanse it? He does. He does cleanse it. So God's body are the souls in the world. When we become dirty from sarvapapebhyo, from all the sins, he cleanses us. But only when we realize that we're his body. Right, so that's the point. So I think now we're going to go back to the main text. We're going to continue on. So now he's talking about the first person form of moksha ishami. After this, I will not give you up, even into your own hands. Won't I myself remove the dirt from my own body? So we were just discussing this in P.B. Anangacharya's commentary. Right. After this, I, the Supreme Lord, will not give you up, the individual Chaitanya, who is my body, even into your own hands. Why would I say, if I get dirty, why would I say, oh, my body is dirty, why don't I just leave it up to my body to clean itself? No, the soul will therefore will the body and force the body to go clean itself. You will clean the body. You will be the doer. You will go and you will clean the body when your body gets dirty. You won't just simply say, well, if the body wants to clean itself, the body will clean itself. No, you have to clean the body. So won't I myself remove the dirt from my own body? Yes, of course, the Lord will remove the dirt from our body. So we shouldn't be afraid. We shouldn't be afraid of all these sins. That's the point. We shouldn't be afraid that these sins cannot be washed up or that they're going to be some sort of impediment. The Lord is going to remove those, as we would remove dirt from our own body by taking a bath. So you have been wandering around for all this time thinking that you are capable of doing your own work, right? All of your own works, right? Whatever you desire to do in this material world. And then even when you became aware that you're a soul within a body, that you're not this body, and aware of the idea of liberation to get free from the cycle of birth and death, you still think, oh, this is just another job, like cleaning the front yard or taking out the garbage or whatever. This is just another job that I have a desire to do something, right? And I get out there and I do it. So liberation, that's just another work which I will perform. I will perform efforts to do, and I will achieve it, right? But that's not what liberation is. That's not the way to liberation, right? So we're thinking, right, that we are capable of doing the work of getting liberated. In other words, our efforts will be sufficient to get us to liberation in some way. Even if we then think, oh, our efforts are so puny and God's efforts are very great. So it'll be a cooperation between us and God. We'll take one step and he'll take 100 steps towards us, like that. Still, we think we have to take that first step. We have to take that small, insignificant, step, that action. We have to make that action. No, not even that. There is nothing that we can do to achieve liberation. It is all up to him. He alone is the upaya. He alone is the means to liberation. That was explained to us by Lord Krishna himself in the previous words Mam ekam. Mam ekam. Ekam means one only him. He is the only means. Mam means Krishna, Lord Krishna, Sriman Narayana, the Supreme Lord. Ekam, only one, the only one, only Lord Krishna, and not us. There is nothing that we can do. So we do not believe in this cooperative grace, right? Again, what is cooperative? The example of a cooperative grace is the baby monkey and the mother monkey. The baby cat, the kitten and the mother cat, that is an example of causeless grace, of irresistible grace, right? Where the kitten doesn't even have to agree to be saved, right? Even kicking and screaming, the kitten is taken by the mother and saved. There is nothing that the kitten does. The kitten can just simply lie there, or even the kitten can fight back, but the mother is going to save the kitten, right? There's nothing the kitten can do or not do to stop himself being saved. So, again, because we've been in this material world so long, and everything that we do, we understand that we get a result by our action, by our doing something. So therefore, when we come to the realization that we try to attain moksha, we think, yes, here's another goal which I have to achieve by being qualified, performing the actions with my own efforts perfectly, and maybe for a long time, maybe for many births, in order to overcome all of these obstacles. And therefore, this is the way to liberation. No, that is not the way to liberation. Simply understanding the Lord is the upaya. He is the only means. That's the only way. Aham tva. Amam ekam sharanam bhaja. Sharanam means to surrender. Mam ekam, only to him. Only taking him as the means. So I just thought, okay, so you have been wandering all around for a long time thinking that you are capable of doing your own work of salvation. So I just thought, he's doing his own work, right? The Lord sees us, right? He sees us doing our own work in this material world for our own results, even if it's karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. He sees us putting the efforts in, and he says, okay, so you're doing this. So you think that you can attain liberation by doing your efforts. So go ahead, do those efforts. No problem. I'll let you do that. Right? Just like the two birds in the tree. One bird's just watching. He's watching. Oh, this other bird wants to try and eat all the fruits, the good fruits, the bad fruits, the sweet fruits, the sour fruits. Okay, let him do it. Now that you have realized that you are my shesha, you are my servant, you're my slave, you're my property, like my own body, right? God is saying, you are my body. Now that you've realized that you're my body and have cast your burden on me, you have now surrendered to me. You have decided, you have understood through your mentality. Now you understand that I am the only way, right? I will not give you up into your own hands. I will not now give you back into your own hands. In your own hands means so that you can do your own efforts. I won't let you slide back into this idea of doing your own efforts, right? And cast your burden. Now that you've realized that you're my shesha, my servant, like my own body, and have cast your burden on me, right? The whole burden of liberation is on the Lord. The whole everything is up to him. At that time, I will not give you up into your own hands again. I will not give anything back to you to do, right? And tell you to make your efforts to remove your sins. So I won't do that. Won't I myself, the body bearer, the sharira means body. Shariri means the owner of the body, right? In the sense of material body we have, the soul is the owner of the body. In the sense of the bigger body of the universe and the souls, God is the controller and supporter and pervader of the universe, of souls and matter, right? That is his body. So he is the ultimate shariri. He's the ultimate owner of us, of the souls and the universe as his body. Right. Won't I myself, as the body bearer, the shariri, remove the dirt of ignorance from you who are my body? Naturally, when we get dirt on our body, we clean it off. Right. So he also, when his parts of his body become dirty, which means us, then he cleans it off naturally. The statement, won't I myself remove the dirt from my body, is made to show that both the effort and benefit are the Lord's. Okay, so sometimes people have problems with this idea. Right, the effort is the Lord's. How are you going to reach liberation as an infinitesimal jiva soul? You are going to achieve liberation by putting the job of liberation, your liberation, completely in the hands of the Lord, completely surrendering unto him and letting him do it. He will then do it. So it will be his effort. It will be his effort, right? Just as everything actually is his effort. Everything that happens is his effort, right? We just can't see it like that. But once we understand it's all his effort, even liberation is his effort. So it's his effort. When you do an effort, we think when a person does an effort, that person deserves the credit, deserves the fruit, deserves the result of that effort. When the Lord saves us, therefore, who gets the result of saving us? The Lord. The Lord also gets the fruit. He gets the fruit. He gets the phala of saving us. So, who benefits most from this? Who benefits most? This is also described in Srivachana Bhushan. Who benefits most from the liberation of the soul? Does the soul benefit most? Most people will say the soul benefits most because the soul's in samsara, the soul's enjoying and suffering in this material world, in happiness and distress, having to take all different bodies and things. The soul getting liberation definitely is. God doesn't need the soul to be liberated, so therefore the soul must benefit more. No, it is God who benefits more. God is the one who benefits because God is the one who puts the effort in to do it, and God does it, and therefore God benefits from it. Right? And God benefits more, just like if any property which becomes lost, like my cell phone. If I lose my cell phone and then I get my cell phone back, who benefits from that? You say the cell phone benefits from being found by me? No. The cell phone is like an inanimate object. We are also like inanimate objects. We're like slaves or servants of the Lord, but just like inanimate objects, right? So we're the property of the Lord. He benefits by having us back there having us there with him in Sri Vaikuntham, serving him. So thus, this says, none of your obstructions will remain. So even in the word, moksha yishyami, he's assuring us that all these sins are going to be gone, that he himself is going to cleanse us of all these sins. So we don't have to worry about that. We're going to come to that in a second. Since the desired result is both destruction of obstacles and attainment of the desired goal, why did he state only one? This is the question, right? The attainment of the desired goal was described directly, moksha yishyami, right? The obstruction of the obstruction, the destruction of the obstacles was not described. But if you achieve something, obviously you have to get rid of the obstacles. So the obstacles automatically have to be understood that they're gone. This is because if one is said, if the object which is liberation, moksha, is obtained, right? Then the other is automatically implied. If I attain the goal, automatically it's understood that I've overcome the virodhis, I've overcome the obstacles to the goal, right? Because without overcoming the obstacles to the goal, one cannot attain the goal. So if I simply say, moksha yishyami, it means I cause you to attain liberation, therefore I cause you to reach the goal, therefore it must automatically imply that the things which were holding you back from the goal, the virodhis, the sins, the sarvapapebhyo, have been overcome by me. They've also been overcome by me. This is because if one is said, the other is automatically implied. Therefore, the latter has not been stated. So Moksha Yishami just says, I will give you the goal. I will make you liberated. I will cause you to be liberated. You will achieve the goal. So automatically in that, we automatically understand that all the obstacles will be overcome. Right. It might be argued that it is not stated because this upaya has no other result than that stated for the preceding upayas, given as you will reach me. It might be argued that it is not stated, right? What is not stated? It's not stated specifically that we overcome or the obstacles, which are all the sins, right? Because this means, the means, right, meaning the Lord, right, has no other result than that stated from the preceding upayas, right? So the other upayas, or so-called upayas that we've understood, karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, or even property, right, have got this result, right? And the same result is there when we accept the Lord as the primary means of liberation, as the upaya, as the siddhopaya, the perfect means of liberation. Right. So there's a quotation here from Bhagavad Gita 8:34. Right. If so, then why does he refer to destruction? Why does he refer to destruction of obstacles? Right. This is because destruction of obstacles is greater. If the obstacles are destroyed, the result is attained automatically. Right. So if we're trying to obtain a result and there are certain obstacles in the path, if we just get rid of the obstacles, the result is automatically attained. If there's no more obstacles to the result or the goal will be attained. Thus, there is no need to state it separately. There's no need to state it separately. In this, so there's a couple of reasons there why Krishna hasn't separately said that the obstacles will be overcome. In this context, the objections and refutations he has presented concisely in his Shriyapati Pati Rahasya and elaborately in his Parantapati and Chani Charamam should be reflected on. These are other works by Pila Lokacharya, which have a lot of different arguments back and forth about this particular point. Anyhow, here it's enough just to understand that much. After this, he presents the last phrase. What is the last phrase? Ma Suchaha. Right? So we finish with Moksha Yishami, Ma Suchaha, and gives a meaning. Right? So Ma Suchaha, this means, right? What is Ma Suchaha? Since you are not involved, right? You have, and the word here, adhikari is used. Adhikari means you're not qualified, right? Adhikari means qualified. You don't have any qualification, right, of doing your own work of salvation. You don't have the qualification to do the work of salvation, of liberation. You cannot cause your own liberation. You cannot. Only the Lord can give liberation, right? So, Masuchaha, which means don't fear or grieve not, right? This says, since you are not involved in doing the work of your salvation, what does that mean? You are not doing the efforts. You are not doing karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. You're not making those efforts. You are not even doing the effort of doing property. You are not even doing the effort of crying out and asking for the Lord to become the primary means of the siddhopaya. You're not even doing that. None of these things you are doing. He's doing all of these things. Right? Since you are not involved in any way in doing your own work for salvation, there is nothing that you can do or not do that will cause your liberation. And since I am undertaking your work, right? I am undertaking your work. He is actually doing it. The Lord is doing that work. You see that there is no basis for your grief. If I have to be qualified to attain a goal, if I then have to do something, perform an effort to attain that goal, right? Then I have a responsibility. I have a work to be done. And if I'm not qualified to do that work, or if I don't perform that work, over a period of time until it's done perfectly, right? Then that doesn't happen. The goal isn't achieved, right? But since it's not my work, it's the Lord's work. Since it's not my effort, but it's his effort, right? And since the Lord is undertaking that work, right, then why would there be any grief from thinking that it could fail? When I perform an effort, I can think, wow, if I don't do this properly, I'm going to fail. But if the Lord is the one who's doing it, the Lord is supreme, has the supreme adhikari. He's completely qualified. He's totally qualified. Again, he's the siddhapaya. He's the perfect means. So because he's the perfect means, right, he can't fail. He has 100% success rate in forcing, not just forcing, causing liberation, causing the soul, the chaitana, the individual being to be liberated. 100%. It's cannot fail. He cannot fail. Siddhapaya. Right? So if he cannot fail and he's the one who's performing the work, then where is any idea of our grief at all? Why would we worry at all about anything? We cannot worry about failure because there cannot be failure. There is no scope for failure in this endeavor because it's the Lord's endeavor. It's not our endeavor. Right. Since I, the Lord, am undertaking your work of giving you liberation, I'm causing you to get liberation, you see that there's no basis for your grief. Thus, he causes Arjuna's grief to be dispelled. He tells him, you don't have to worry. Don't masuchaha. Don't worry. Don't worry. Grieve not. Because I'm doing everything. If you were involved in doing your own work of salvation, it might be proper for you to languish and grieve, saying, I do what I have to do to be saved. What do I have to do to be saved? What do I have to do to be saved? If I had not undertaken your work, right, it would be proper to grieve. If the Lord had not undertaken the work of saving the soul, it would be proper for the soul to grieve, saying, he is indifferent towards my work of salvation. How am I going to be saved? Right? And other prayers like this. Oh Lord, how am I going to be saved? You know, how will I be saved? One has to have mahavishvasam. It's part of property, is that one has to have great faith that the Lord will save you, that he is the perfect savior and he's going to save you. Right? But such is not the case. Realizing your essential dependence, swarupa paratantriya, right? That you are essentially completely dependent upon the Lord, which is such that neither the effort nor the benefit of your salvation belongs to you. You have not involved yourself in doing the work of saving yourself. Let's say that again. But such is not the case. Realizing your essential dependence, swarupa paritantra, which is such that neither your effort nor benefit, right, of your salvation belongs to you. You have not involved yourself in doing the work of saving yourself. I, the Lord, am your Lord and owner, Swami, such that both the effort and the benefit in your salvation belong to me, to the Lord. And I have taken the responsibility of doing the work of saving you by cutting off all the obstructions on your side. Therefore, you see there is no basis for you to be grieved. Saying this, the Lord causes the grief of the one who was previously overwhelmed with grief to be dispelled. So Lord Krishna, by saying masuchaha, completely explaining all of the meaning of the Charma Sloka up to this point, and then masuchaha, finally he says, therefore you grieve not, you don't need to worry. Don't worry. No worries, he says to him. Because I am doing it. I am the one who's doing it. Thus, Pila Lokacharya has revealed how the Lord removes grief by explaining the nature of the two individuals, the protector and the one to be protected. The protector, the Supreme Lord, and the one to be protected, the individual soul, with the words aham and tva. Sarva dharmam parityaja, mam ekam sharanam bhaja. Aham, Twa, aham. When the Lord says aham, he means myself. He means the Lord. Twa, he means you. He means you. He means the individual living being. So he has explained that. We already went over those words, right? So the Lord has already revealed and removed your grief by the meanings of the word hums and twa, these two words. Hereafter, he reveals how the Lord removes grief by referring to the nature of sins to be removed and the one who removes them, right? So, okay, before he explained that with aham and twa. But now specifically, because it's coming right after sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami, so because masujaha comes directly after sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami, it refers specifically to sarva papebhyo and mokshayishyami. Sarva papebhyo meaning the virodi, the sins, right, the obstacle, and mokshayishyami meaning the work that the Lord performs of causing us to attain liberation. And therefore, he explains that because of this, we have no worries, we have no problems, we can have no grief, we can have no fear. So, after declaring the nature of the destroyer, and after saying the things to be destroyed will not come and overwhelm you again, he says, see, there is indeed no cause for you to grieve. After declaring the nature of the destroyer, right? Who's destroying all of those sins? The Lord himself. And after saying the things to be destroyed, the sins, right, will not come and overwhelm you again. Not even you won't even think of them like nightmares, like dreams, like bad dreams. You'll know that you performed these sins, but they will not affect you even like you're affected by a nightmare, right? He says, see, there is indeed no cause for you to grieve. There's no cause for you to grieve. He has stated the nature of the destroyer of obstacles as being endowed with the qualities of omniscience. The nature of the destroyer of obstacles, the Supreme Lord, right, is endowed with the qualities of omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, all these other ananta kalyana gunas, unlimited auspicious qualities the Lord has. He is totally 100% perfectly qualified to destroy those obstacles and to cause us to attain liberation, right? In the word aham, we've already understood that in the word aham. By the causal form of the phrase, twa sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami, he has stated the sins which are to be destroyed will run away in fright upon seeing you. Now that you have accepted me alone, the Lord alone, as the upaya, as the means, the perfect means, right? They will not come again and overwhelm you, right? So even if he thinks maybe they'll come again, they won't come again because the Lord is so perfect at driving away all of these karmic reactions and sins. Then with Masuchaha, he says, after this, there is no basis for your grief. You have no worries, no fear. You should not grieve at all. Here, using the statement of the wise Alwar as an illustration, Pillai Lokacharya shows how the Lord declares his intention to remove the soul's obstacles and thus dispels his grief. So in text 261, he quotes from Tiruchanda Virutam, right? And we can also see text 278. Oh, poor heart, why do you immerse yourself in an ocean of misery? Right? Which is what the Alwar says. Tirumalasai Piran, Tirumalasai Alwar, right? Speaking to his heart, tells how the Lord of all, in order to destroy all the soul's obstacles and take him as a servant, voluntarily came and entered him. Thus, he says, after this, why should you be sunk in a sea of misery? In the same way, the Lord also, in this place, tells how he has taken it upon himself to destroy all the soul's sins and speaks to him, right, saying, after this, why would you grieve? Right? Why would you grieve? It's like a question even. It's a command. It's a command, and it's understood. The Lord's saying you don't need to grieve like that. But he's saying, why would you grieve? Why would you grieve? No worries. You have no worries now. Right. When I have forgiven your sins and considered them as merits, what right do you have to grieve? So we'll come to that in a second. Let's see what Vivekananda says about the previous sutras. Okay. So Mahasuchaha means do not worry, or do not grieve, right? Do not fear. Right. The Lord says, if it is your act, then you have to worry. That what can I do for myself? Right? If I do not act for you, then you have to worry. He's ignoring me. How will I be saved? Right? Instead, having understood your true nature as a servant, as a slave, as the property of the Lord, right? You are not doing anything to save yourself. I, being your Lord, am now focused on your protection. Therefore, there is no need to worry. The Lord says this to he who was worried before. In other words, Krishna says this to Arjuna, who was worried before about his sins, right? To show that he has nothing to worry now. He has nothing to worry about now. So then he says, though through aham, the word aham, he has shown his nature of possessing qualities which such as complete knowledge, etc., and all other qualities as well, all other auspicious qualities, which remove the obstacles. Through twa sarvapapebhyo mokshayishyami, he has shown that the sins will fear the Chaitanya, the living being, and leave him. They'll run away. This being the case, he says, that the Chaitanya, that the living being, has nothing further to fear, Masuchaha. Through the Parsuram, with the next verse, Tiruchanda Virutam, Tirumalasai Alwar asks his mind, why are you immersed in an ocean of sorrow when the Supreme Lord has stated that he would remove all the obstacles, enter us, and accept our service? Lord Krishna, too, asked Arjuna the same. So going back to the main text, we'll explain that. So again, when I have forgiven your sins and considered them as merits, what right do you have to grieve? I've already forgiven. The Lord says, I have already forgiven the sins you have committed. Sarvapapebhyo. Remember, Sarvapapebhyo means all sins that we've committed, all sins that we're committing, and all sins that we may commit in the future. Not only that, but afterwards, out of affection or vatsalya, right, that I have for you, I do not think them as sins. I do not think them as sins, but rather I consider them to be merits. This is very difficult for some people to accept. God sees the sins of the souls. He sees the sins of the world as merits because they inspire him to save the living beings in the world. This is called Sabhogya Hitata Kripa. God enjoys the sin of the world. Right? So I do not think of them as sins, but rather I consider them to be merits. As it is said, taking the sins I have committed to be merits. And this is a quote from Tiruchanda Virutam. So we'll just read this. This is Tiruchanda Virutam, again by Tirumalasai Alwar, right? And verse 111. It says here, people say that you can be reached even by those who have abused you with harsh words, right? The example is Shishupal. Shishupal cursed Krishna. He cursed out Krishna, called him bad names 100 times, and he was killed by Krishna with his chakra. His Sudarshana chakra cut his head off. And yet he attained liberation. Krishna gave him liberation, gave him moksha, even though he cursed Krishna, even though he was inimical towards Krishna, even though he used harsh words. So people say that you can be reached by even those who have abused you with harsh words, by those who have fought against you on the battlefield, like Bhishma. Bhishma, of course, was a great devotee of Krishna, but he fought against Krishna on the battlefield. right? He was on the other side, and were destroyed, by your anger. Like there are so many, like Jaya Vijaya, when they came, Krishna destroyed them in their births as Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksha, Kumbhakarna, and Ravana. He destroyed them, even though they were inimical towards him, right? He destroyed them and gave them liberation. So, okay. So people say that you can be reached by even those who have abused you with harsh words, by those who have fought against you on the battlefield, and who were destroyed by your anger. Therefore, O Mayan, which is the name of the Lord, right? Take the sins committed by a dog like me to be merits, O Lord of the universe. So Tidumala Sayal was praying like this: O Lord, right? O Lord. People say that you even liberate the persons who are harsh to you, or who fought against you, or who you kill, like that. So in that case, take all my sins as merits, and please accept me, even though I'm a sinner. Accept my sins, and give me liberation, right? And so here, taking the sins I have committed to be merits, and if my devotee did well, if my devotees did that, they did well. Okay, so this is interesting. This is a quote from Periyalwar Tirumoli. Periyalwar, yesterday was at Andal Tiruvadipuram, Adipuram, the birth star of Andal, appearance of Andal, and Andal's foster father Periyalwar wrote Periyalwar Tirumoli 492. Right, so he says here in his Periyalwar is saying, even if the lady of the lotus, meaning Lakshmi, right, points out the sins of his servants, the Lord would say, my devotees would never do that. If they did well. So even if Lakshmi points out, she's not going to. She in fact goes to the Lord and she plays down our sins, and she says, don't punish them. But let's say in some theoretical way that even if Lakshmi, he's definitely going to take notice of what Lakshmi says to him, his divine consort. So if the Lord even hears from Lakshmi that, look, they did these sins, the Lord will disregard that, and he'll say, no, if they would never do like that. My devotees, my followers, my servants, my slaves, my property, they would never act like that. They would never do such sinful things. They would never think in those ways, those myriad of ways that we understood from the word sarvapapebhyo, right? And if they did, even if they did, he'll say to Lakshmi, even if they did well. They did well to do that. Let them do that, because at least they're getting my attention and I'm going to still save them, right? Thus, these 5 words in the second half of the Sharma Sloka have stated the following. What are the 5 words in the second part of Sharma Sloka? Okay, so we got the first half. Sarvadharma parityajya mame kamsharanam bhaja. First half. Right. Second half. Aham tva sarva papebhyo moksha yishyami ma and ma suchaha. I guess ma suchaha counts as 5 as right? Aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami, and masuchaha somehow counts as 1. I don't know why it counts as 1, because actually should be 2. But anyway, he says here, thus these 5 words in the second half of the Charma Sloka, maybe that's a good question for Dr. Chiranrai, how masuchaha can be understood to be 1 word, or one word. Yeah. So what are the meanings of these 5 words of the last part, the second half of the Charma Sloka? Let's sum it up. The nature, number 1, the nature of one who removes is told by the word aham. The locus, or the place of the things to be removed, right? The sins, the locus of the sins, right? Is twa, is you. You are the place you're the thing that has all the sins, right? So number 3, the sins themselves, right? That is the things to be removed. Sarva papebhyo. 4, how they are to be removed. Moksha yishyami. The word moksha yishyami means I cause them to be removed. The Lord says, I cause them to be removed. Right? They will be removed by me. Right? Number 5, and he gives 2 words here, but it's, he counts it as 1 word somehow, right? The cessation of grief, which results from their removal. So after they're removed, the cessation of the grief, the cessation of fear, right? No more worries, no worries, right? By their removal, these 5 things. After this, he concludes by revealing the following in turn. 1, how rare it is for one to take delight in this sloka, right? How rare is it, right? Even in the Gita, Krishna says, Manushanam sahasreshu kastin yatati siddhaye yatatammaphi siddhanam kastin mem mamviti tatpataha. He says, out of thousands amongst thousands of people, only one endeavors to know me. And out of thousands of them, only one knows me in truth. And there are many, many, even Vaishnavas or even other religionists who understand some of this about how to surrender to God and how to approach God and how to try to attain liberation like that. But even amongst them, how few actually understand the meaning of this final order of Lord Krishna in such detail as explained here. How rare is it? How rare is it for one to delight in the sloka and to understand it? Right? 2, what the aim of this sloka is? Right? So he concludes by revealing the following in turn. How rare is it to delight and to understand it? What is the aim of this sloka? Right? How rare is it for one to have faith in it, even after understanding it? Right? Even after thinking it's a great sloka and delighting in it, even after understanding what the aim of it is, right, and its meaning, to have faith in it also, to actually put faith in this sloka, in what Lord Krishna says here, right? It's one thing to academically understand it; it's another thing to actually put our faith in it, right? Number 4, the reason why the Lord Himself didn't teach it in the beginning. The reason why the Lord Himself didn't teach it in the beginning. Why didn't the Lord teach this in the very beginning? Why does it come in the last chapter? Why is it practically the last thing that Lord Krishna says? Right? Number 5, why the Vedas enjoin other upayas? Why even the Gita enjoins other so-called means of liberation? Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. What about the other 31 or 32 Upanishadic vidyas that are there in the Upanishads, apart from the Nyasa Vidya, which means surrender to the Lord, right? Apart from that, there is Gayatri Vidya, doing Gayatri, meditating on Brahman like this, like that, like the other. Why are all these other things said, right? 6, that there is no fault in relinquishing other upayas outright, right? That is never said in any other place. In any other place in the scriptures, we never see the Lord saying, all those other things, all those other ways that I taught in the Upanishads and the Gita and the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, all these other things that I taught in all these other scriptures, in the Bhagavata and all these other, they can just be given up. We never see that. But here in this sloka, in the Gita, which is part of the Mahabharata, this is why the Mahabharata is also considered the 5th Veda. It's a very important shastra like that. In this particular sloka is the jewel, the crest jewel of the Gita, the crest jewel of the Mahabharata, the crest jewel of the Itihasas, let's say. It has so much meaning in it. So that there in nowhere else is it said to relinquish other upayas or so-called means to liberation, right? And so here, there's a footnote. It says, so it says here, there is no harm in relinquishing other upayas outright. And this is the southern school, the Sri Rangam Acharyas, the Tengalai Acharyas say this. And this recalls Vedanta Deshika of the northern school of the Kanchipura Modigalaya Acharyas school. Vedanta Deshika's chief criticism of the interpretation of the Charma Sloka, which made by both the Tengalai Acharyas and the Advaitins, right? So even the Advaitins following Shankaracharya, the non-dualists, the monists, they have a way of understanding of Charma Sloka, and we also have the Tengalais have a means, and Vedanta Deshika criticizes both of them. He criticizes the Tengalais and the Advaitins. That is by interpreting parityaja as a commandment parityaja. Sarvadharma parityaja. Sarvadharma parityaja means completely abandoning, having completely abandoned, right? We interpret it to be a commandment. We end up advocating swarupa tyaga, outright renunciation of enjoined dharmas. That's what Vedanta Deshika says. Deshika tries to tar, right? He tries to paint, shellac the Tengalai interpretation with the Advaitan's brush, right? In chapter 29 of Rahasya Trayasar, pages 144, the next point, Manavala Mahamuni makes that performance of these dharmas is maintained by the prapana in another form as service, seems to try to answer that criticism, and we'll see that in the next churnas, in the next sutras coming up, right? So the Tengalais have an answer for that idea. The idea of Vedanta Deshika is saying, but what do the Advaitins say Sarvadharma Parityaja means? It means take sannyas and give up doing anything, right? So in the Gita, Krishna says, Sasanyasi cha yogi cha naniragnina cha kriya. So what they're basically saying, the Advaitins, is they're saying that 1866 Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying, become a yogi, become a sannyasi, give up everything, don't have anything to do with society, and abandon all regular dharmas, give up all these dharmas. The Tengalais are saying something similar. They're saying completely abandon all dharmas, including karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, all of these other means, so-called means to liberation, and simply accept the Lord himself, even giving up property, even giving up the idea that property is the means, right, or surrender is the means. Just simply take the Lord himself as the primary means. That's what the Tengalai Acharya is saying, Sri Rangamacharya. So Vedanta Deshika is criticizing both of them for making parityaja, the form of the verb parityaja. Tyajati means to abandon. Parityajati means completely abandon, as a vidhi, right? And then not as what we call an artavad, not as some people take it. The northern acharyas, they take parityaja to be what's called an artavad. That is, it happens naturally. It naturally happens. It happens along. It's automatically going to happen, right? And that what we're giving up is we're not giving up bhakti yoga, karma yoga, and jnana yoga, but we're just giving up the fruits of karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. But actually, the Sri Vaishnava Tengalai Acharyas, that Sri Rangamacharyas are saying, no, we're actually giving up those things outright. And that's what the Advaitins are also saying. And Vedanta Deshika criticizes that, because those things, he says, are part of our swarupa, that the swarupa of the soul is a doer, and the soul has to continue. Even Krishna says everyone has to do, in the Gita, Krishna says everybody has to work. I work, everybody does work. So we have to do those efforts like that. That's Vedanta Deshika's point. Now, Madhavala Mahamuni later on, he's going to say, yes, we keep doing those things, but we're not doing them as upayas. That's the point. We're doing them as kainkarya. We're doing them as service. And therefore, in the Tengalai Acharya's sankalpa is kainkarya rupam. In the Vadagalaya Acharya's sankalpa is prityatam. We're doing it, and we're doing it, but we're giving up the result to the Lord. And he's doing it through us. And the Tengalai Acharyas is, no, we're not doing it. The Lord's doing it through us. And even if you think we're doing it, it's being done for his service, and not as an upaya, not as a means to liberation. Okay? Or a means to anything, really. It's just it's on the order of the Lord and for his service. Okay, so that is point 6, right? That there is no fault in relinquishing other so-called upayas outright. The fact that since these so-called upayas are included in a different form, they are not really abandoned outright, Swarupa Tyaga. So they're included in a different form, right? Madhavala Mahamuni is going to say they are kainkarya, they are service. What the sadhana is for attainment is, right? That's also been stated. What the sadhana for attainment is, that is completely putting the burden of our liberation on the Lord and making him the primary means, or the siddhapaya, the perfect means. What has to be present on the part of the soul in order to attain that result? That's also been explained. Right. that the Lord does not want the soul's good deeds, right? Not even a request or a cry out for help or to be saved, right? That if one believes and follows these words, he will be redeemed. If not, he will be destroyed. Destroyed means he stays here in this material world, right? He's not actually destroyed, right? He's here, right? He doesn't achieve his goal, let's put it that way, which is liberation. That if one without determination, Vyasaya, right, engages in supaya without determination, if one without determination engages in the supaya, this means it will end in destruction. So we have to have faith. At least we have to have faith, right? And what is the upaya? Right, anyway, the Lord is the upaya. So anyway, then the one who is qualified for this, the ones who are qualified for this, the Lord is ultimately the person who's qualified. Right. For the first of these, he cites an anecdote to illustrate how rare it is that one would delight in this sloka. So now he's going to give anecdotes for all of these points like that. So let's go to Pibyanandacharya and see what he says. So the Lord asks, first, I made your sins the target of for my forgiveness. Then, due to my great affection for you, I stopped thinking of them as sins and started considering them as meritorious acts. Because of the Lord's affection to us, he sees even our sins as meritorious acts. This is the example given here. I was describing the doctrine of Sabogya Hetaka Kripa. The example given here is like a mother who tells a child not to play in the mud. The child goes and becomes dirty by playing in the mud anyway. He disobeys the mother. So this is like the soul's committing sins in this material world. The mother seems to be angry with the child afterwards and then cleans the body of the child, gives the child a bath after playing in the mud, like that. While she is cleaning the body of the child, she is scolding the child and telling him, why did you do that? You're such a naughty boy. You did this. You became dirty and blah, blah. I told you not to do that, right? But the mentality, the mind of the mother is actually thinking, she is thinking, I am actually happy that the child went and played in the mud and became dirty because now it gives me the chance to bathe my child, and I'm enjoying so much bathing my child and cleaning my child. This was described before when the Lord said that he would clean the body, the dirt from his own body. We are the dirty child. The Lord is our mother and he's cleaning us like that. So he appreciates cleaning us. He likes to clean us just as we like to clean our body from dirt like that. So he also enjoys that. So he enjoys the sins of the world. Sabogya Hetaka Kripa. His mercy is that he enjoys the sin of the world because it gives him this chance to show his mercy, his anugraha, right? And not his nigraha, his anger or his rejection. So why would you have to worry, right? So that was explained in Masuchaha, right? So now an episode is shown here that shows the difficulty that the living being gaining a taste for this. During Ramanuja's time, there was a devotee called Uyakonda who was following the path of bhakti. Ramanuja taught him the meaning of the Sharma Sloka in order to make him follow the path of prapati. Uyakonda then told Ramanuja, these meanings are indeed very beautiful, but I don't have the liking to give up on that bhakti and seek this prapati. Ramanuja replied, because you have knowledge, you accepted the meaning. But as you don't have the grace of the Lord, you did not get a liking for it. These words of Ramanuja are to be thought of here. All the Shastras stand on one side and this sloka stands on the other side, according to the Tengalite Sri Vaishnavas. All the other Shastras teach that you should do this, do that, do the other. And Sharma Sloka teaches you should give up doing everything. and let the Lord do it. This is why this sloka is so unique. This is the unique greatness of the Krishna Charma sloka. What is this sloka focused on? It is focused on the independence of the Lord. The Lord is completely and supremely independent. Swarupa. Swatantriya. Independent. Swatantriya. He removes completely even the taste of all the dharmas prescribed in the scriptures, in the shastras for the Chaitanya. So you may have a taste for bhakti. You may have a taste for karma yoga, jnana yoga. You may have a taste for all these things. You may have a taste for doing all these things like that. The Lord will even remove that taste, right, from the Chaitanya, from the living being. He removes all the sins from the living being that stand in the way of him reaching the Lord without expecting anything in return. Doing these, he lets the Chaitanya reach him. He causes the Chaitanya, he causes the living being to attain moksha, to reach him. This is due to his supreme independence. This divine quality is brought forth here. Arjuna saw the superhuman acts of Sri Krishna since his childhood. He heard of Krishna's greatness from the Maharishis. He saw that Krishna was always performing acts for him. Therefore, he decided then that rather than following the paths shown by Krishna, he should seek refuge in Krishna himself, right? So Arjuna, after the whole Bhagavad Gita, he actually rejected all of these other instructions that Krishna gave and simply took shelter in Krishna himself. Krishna was telling him, you do this, you do that, you do that, you do karma yoga, you do jnana yoga, you do bhakti yoga, you do property, you surrender, right? And Arjuna realized, no, I have supreme faith in you alone, Lord. Therefore, you alone are the perfect means. And therefore, I surrender to you alone. And the burden of my liberation is upon you alone. Right? Mam ekam sharanam vraja. Right? After he had taken that path, Krishna is telling him, to seek only him. Right? So Arjuna was on the cusp of rejecting all these things that Krishna had told him to do. And therefore Krishna says, okay, just surrender unto me. Hence, Vangipuratu Nambi would state that this sloka is of the Anuvada Rupam. Anuvada Rupam means it is of the form of an Anuvada, right? And not a Vidhi, right? That is, repeating what someone has already said. Okay, so then the question is, why did he, the Lord, not show this path in the first place and instead explained in detail all the other paths in the beginning? Bhagavad Gita would have been a much shorter book if Krishna had simply told Arjuna this in the very beginning. He did that to check his heart, to see if he stops at those paths itself, or if he becomes qualified for this path. So, just like I said, when Maharishi Yogi, when he translated Bhagavad Gita, he stopped at the 6th chapter, because at the end of the 6th chapter, Krishna says, Yogi napi savrisham madgatenantratmana bhajate Yomam Sameyuktatamomataha. So the greatest person is the yogi. So Maharishi Yogi stops at that point where Krishna says the greatest is the yogi. So Krishna teaches all these other upayas, these other so-called means to liberation, to see where people are. It's like a check, to check where people are at, to check what level they're on. He's teaching this one by one. What is better, what is better, what is better, what is better. Finally gets to the final thing, which is property, which is surrender and to him alone, right, at the end. But he's seeing, are people going to stop at karma yoga? Are people going to stop at jnana yoga? Are people going to stop at bhakti yoga? Are people going to stop at all these other paths? Are people going to simply do these other things? What is their mentality? What are they thinking? So when you get to a point in the Bhagavad Gita where you go, yeah, okay, this makes sense, and this is what I should do. I reject. Okay, I'm not quite sure about this. Maybe I should do something more than that. And when you get to the thing that you think is the ultimate, you stop. So the Advaitins and Gyanis, they like Jnana Yoga. There's people who like Karma Yoga, people who like Bhakti Yoga. There's all sorts of different people. But ultimately, he wants to see if we can be intelligent enough, if we can be sincere enough, we can understand enough to take this final message, to understand this final message. So Lord Krishna might have explained the other paths to test Arjuna's heart, but why did the Lord of the Vedas do the same in the Vedas? That is, why are the other paths shown as paths of moksha in the Vedas? An example is used here. There's a cow that does not stay under control of its owner and always grazes at every place that it is not supposed to. So the owner ties a big stick to its neck that hangs low. So every time the cow tries to run away, the stick would hit its legs and would slow it down. This would prevent the cow from taking off to places where it's not supposed to go. Similarly, the Chaitana, right, or the living being, too enjoys many paths coming out of his ahankara and mamakara. He enjoys many places he shouldn't go, right? In this material world, he's always doing things out of his false ego, I and mine, right? To do with his family, his friends, his self, his body, his nation, like that. And ultimately also thinking that he is the owner of himself. So not just ahankara, or not just mamakara, but ahankara, right? Egoism. In order to remove this enjoyment and make the Chaitanya make the living being realize his true nature, right, of being completely dependent upon the Supreme Lord, the Veda Purusha, the Vedas itself prescribe other paths. However, will it not be a sin for the living being to give up those paths that were responsible for the birth of the realization of his true nature? So should he not keep on going with these paths? Because through studying these paths, he ultimately came to the realization that he is the servant, he's the slave, he's the property of the Lord. The other paths detailed before have drawbacks, such as being opposed to the true nature of the soul, but by having that tinge of ahankara with them, a tinge of egoness. Due to that, the Chaitanya, the living being who has gained the knowledge to follow this path, which is Siddhopaya, the perfect means, right, will not be committing a sin when giving them up. It's not a sin to give up other means if you have the perfect means, right? This is similar to the person taking up sannyasa ashram dharma and giving up prior dharmas that he would have followed up until then, right? So you can't say that a sannyasi is sinful because he doesn't perform upasana homa, he doesn't do these things which a grihastha should do. He's taken a higher dharma. So similarly, you can't say a person who's given up karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga and taken the property and taken the Lord as the primary means of liberation, right, is sinful because he's given up all these other things. It's a higher, it's a greater, it's a more perfect, it's the most perfect means. The Lord himself is the most perfect means, the Siddhopaya. So let's go back to the other, the main document. Let's have a look. So the words of that Ramanuja spoke to Uyakonda should be remembered. So we discussed this, Prabhupada Angacharya discussed this. This is part 75. This should not be understood to be the same Uyakonda. There's two Uyakondas. Okay, so this shouldn't be understood to be the Uyakonda that preceded Yamunacharya. In our Guru Parampara, there is a Uyakonda who came before Yamunacharya in the Guru Parampara. Here, this means another person is one of Ramanuja's disciples, also known as Pundarikaksha. Right, so Uyakonda, who wrote the Tatvanir Tattva Nirnayam. Tattva Nirnayam. Uyakonda, who wrote the Tattva Nirnayam, right, practiced bhakti yoga. He was a bhakti nishta. Bhakti nishta means having faith, firm faith. So bhakti nishta means somebody who has firm faith in bhakti. So he was a follower of bhakti yoga. Ramanuja, thinking to make him a follower of property, a property nishta, right? Someone trying to get him to have faith in property, revealed to him the actual meaning, or the deeper meaning, the esoteric meaning of the Sharma sloka that we just understood. Right. Whereupon Uyakonda said the actual meaning is beautiful. He appreciated Ramanuja explaining the meaning in that way. However, I have no desire to relinquish bhakti yoga and resort to this property. Ramanuja said to him, since you are well learned, you accept the meaning. But since you lack the grace of the Lord, Bhagavat Prasada, you have no desire for it. These words that Ramanuja revealed are to be contemplated. So there are other Vaishnavas. They accept Bhakti Yoga. They agree. They read the Bhagavad Gita and they accept Bhakti Yoga as the means. Right? Even when we explain to them the path of property, which is Siddhopaya, the perfect path, right? The Lord himself is the perfect path, the Siddhopaya, right? Even if we explain this to them, still they're attached to performing their Bhakti Yoga. They're attached to their performance. There's that tinge of egoism there, like that. They're attached to performing that Bhakti Yoga. And then they say, even if they understand philosophically, theoretically, doctrinally, what we're talking about, still they say, I'm attached. I'm attached to performing Bhakti Yoga as a means to liberation. Right? And therefore we say to those persons, okay, that's fine. You're a learned person. You've understood the point. But somehow or other, you don't have the grace of the Lord to perform. The Lord is not making you to perform. He's not making you to perform property. He's making you to perform Bhakti Yoga. Very nice. Go ahead and do it. Like that. But we should think about that. Right? That the actual prasad, the actual greater mercy of the Lord is it when the Lord makes us to perform property, when the Lord makes us to accept that he alone is the primary means, and therefore to give up the idea that our efforts, even if we think our tiny efforts are involved, to give up the idea that any effort at all whatsoever is needed. After this, he reveals the chief aim of this sloka. For this sloka, the Sharma sloka of Sri Krishna, the chief aim is the Lord's autonomy or svatantra. We also discussed this part in P.B. and Angacharyas, right? The most important aspect of this is the Lord's svatantra. It's not up to us. It's completely up to the Lord. He's totally 100% independent. For this sloka, which stands apart from all the Shastras, right? Stands apart from all the Shastras. All the Shastras are telling us, the Lord is telling us, the Acharyas are telling us, the writers of the Shastras, the compiler of the Vedas, everybody, all these other Shastras are telling us, you do something to save yourself. You must do something to save yourself. And this sloka itself only alone is saying, no, the Lord himself is totally independent. He will save you. He is the perfect savior. He is the perfect means to liberation. This is in contrast to everything else in the scriptures. The essential meaning is the autonomy of the Lord, the self-reliant instigator of all. Swadhina Sakala Pravartaka, who causes the soul to relinquish all dharmas prescribed in scripture, so-called dharmas, prescribed in Shastra, right? Which actually we consider as the Sri Rangamacharya is considered to be papas, to be sins, sarva papebhyo, right? Along with any tendency to doing them again. Not only give them up, but don't even think about doing them again. Then he himself becomes the self-sufficient sadhana, right? The siddhopaya, the perfect means, the nirapeksha sadhana, the self-sufficient sadhana. The Lord himself is the self-sufficient sadhana. If someone asks you, what's the sadhana of Sri Vaishnavas? The Lord himself is our sadhana. These are our means. Prapti pratibandhaka sakalpa pangal. Sakalpaka pangal. Right? 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 For the Chaitana destroying all sins which obstruct the Chaitanas, for the Chaitana, destroying all sins that obstruct the salvation. The Lord is the self-sufficient sadhana which destroys all the objects, the things which are the sins which obstruct our salvation. Pratibandhaka sa kalapa panto. Right? All the obstacles, all the virodhis, and granting attainment of himself, swaprapti, attainment of himself, swaprapti, attainment of him. He is the goal, the upaya, and he is the upaya, the siddhupaya. He's the perfect means and the perfect goal. After this, he reveals how rare it is to have faith in this. It's rare, right? This understanding is rare. And even acting on this understanding, having faith in this understanding, accepting this understanding is even rarer. So one may even understand this theoretically, but practically, fully understanding it and taking shelter of the Lord as the only means, that is even rarer. He says, Vanki Purata Nambi's view was that also known as Andrapurna. This person's name was also known as Andrapurna. He was a disciple of Ramanuja's view is this sloka itself is in the category of a statement of what has already occurred. What has already occurred, an anuvada. So there's these two statements, the vidhi and the anuvada, right? The verb parichaja is considered to be a vidhi. But the whole statement of the Charma Sloka is considered to be an anuvada, is considered to be a statement of what's already occurred. The most authoritative Vangi Puratu Nambi, otherwise known as Andrapurna, revealed that this sloka's meaning itself is in a category of anuvada, that which has already occurred. Why has it already occurred? Because the Lord himself, the whole thing depends upon the Lord himself. It is willed by the Lord himself. So it's already occurred. The Lord has already saved everyone. He will already save everybody. Eventually will save everybody. So it's already happened. He explains how this is so. This is because Krishna says to resort to him after Arjuna has already recognized that Krishna alone is his refuge because, 1, Krishna's heroic deeds, 2, the statements of the sages, and 3, the fact that Krishna took it upon himself, Arjuna's work. Right? Arjuna, who was qualified adhikari for this upaya, for this means, right, had faith that all the upayas he talks about are not our refuge. He alone is our refuge. So Arjuna at this point had come to the conclusion that Krishna was the only refuge. Krishna was the only thing that could save him, and not karma yoga, jnana yoga, or bhakti yoga, or any other means of effort. He knew this, first of all, from the superhuman deeds that Krishna performed in his youth. He knew this, but maybe he was forgetting about it, right? Because Arjuna says in the Gita, he says, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavam. He knows that Krishna is God. After seeing the universal form, he gets reminded, Krishna is God, right? This is in the 10th and 11th chapters, right? So then he says, he says, Deva Rishi Naradastata, Asito, Devalo Vyasa, all of these different rishis have said the same thing. That's the second point here. So he is reminded by Krishna with the universal form. In the 10th and 11th chapters, Krishna talks about his glories, right? He realizes Krishna is God and not just his friend, not just his chauffeur. And he knows this from the amazing story of the life of Lord Krishna, Krishna's heroic deeds. And then he also knows, because he says he knows it. He says it in that verse, Param Dhamma, Param Brahma, Param Pavitram, Paramam Bhavam, Purusham Shashvatam Divyam, Adidevam Macham Divam, Bahustram Rishaya Sarve, Deva Rishis Naradas Tata, Asito Devalo Vyasa, Swayam Cheva Bhavishime. He says all of these, Asita Devalo Vyasa, Narada, these sages also say it. He says that. That's the second point, right? And he also knows it because Krishna took upon Arjuna's work. He became his chariot driver. He became his guru, right? He taught him all these things, right? Not only was his friend, right? And ultimately he becomes his only refuge. So he knows all these things. Arjuna he's on the cusp of accepting Krishna before Krishna says this. So Krishna says this Charma Sloka. He's on the cusp, Arjuna's on the cusp of accepting Krishna as the Siddhupaya, as the perfect means. He knew this, first of all, from the superhuman deeds of Krishna performed in his youth, from his youth onwards, which demonstrate his ability to do the impossible, right? Secondly, there were statements made by the sages or rishis who had come true, knowledge of the higher and lower realities, saying the illustrious Narayana, who reclines on the milk ocean, has arisen from his serpent couch and come to the city of Mathura. And that's a variant reading of Mahabharata 3, 86-20. Where the meritorious Dwarka is, there is Madhusudana. He indeed is the truly primordial deity. He indeed is the eternal Dharma. That's Mahabharata 386-21. These are all quotes from Mahabharata, right? Remember, the Gita is part of Mahabharata. Where the deity Narayana is the eternal supreme spirit, there is the entire world, O Partha, and all holy rivers and temples. This is a quotation from Mahabharata 386-25. Brahmins who know the Veda and people learned in spiritual matters speak of the great Krishna as the eternal Dharma, right? This is Mahabharata 386-22. And Govinda is called the holiest of holy. He is the merit of all merits, right? The most auspicious of all that is auspicious. This is a quotation from Mahabharata 386-23. Krishna indeed is the origin and destruction of the world. For the sake of Krishna, this entire universe, animate and inanimate, exists. This is a quotation from Mahabharata 2, 35-22 and 12, 336-82. Furthermore, from his childhood on, regardless of whether he was living in city or in a forest, Krishna looked after Arjuna's needs, right, as one who had that responsibility. It is after Arjuna attained this faith that Krishna said, such being the case, resort to me. For this reason, it is called an anuvada, something which has already occurred. So throughout Arjuna's whole life with Lord Krishna, he has understood this. He's understood this explicitly, implicitly. He's understood that Krishna is the only way, like that. But now Krishna is just simply restating it in the Charma Sloka. And therefore, it's understood that the whole Charma Sloka is an anuvada. It's something that is something that's already taken place, already occurred. He tells why this sloka's meaning, the Charma Sloka's meaning, was not taught in the beginning. Why wasn't it taught right in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita? It would have saved me reading the whole book. Why not just tell me this in the beginning? All that has transpired theretofore is in order to test Arjuna's heart. This is what we were talking about. The whole of the Bhagavad Gita is testing people to see them. Will you accept Karma Yoga as the means? Will you accept Jnana Yoga? Will you accept Bhakti Yoga? Or will you accept all these paths of self-effort? Do you accept that you have to do something? Do you maintain that tiny tinge of ego that you have to actually do something to attain liberation? He first began to teach the upayas, the so-called upayas, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga, when Arjuna said, tell me conclusively what is best. I am your disciple who have taken refuge in you. Teach me. So Arjuna first becomes the student of the Lord becomes the guru, and he asks him what is best. So he starts out, but he doesn't start immediately what is ultimately the best. He tells him bit by bit, and he wants to test the student, and he wants to see what level the student is on, what level Arjuna is on, whether he will stop him at a certain point. But rather than teaching this upaya, right, the Siddhupaya, the perfect upaya, the Lord as the only means, right from the beginning, he exhaustively teaches the other upayas, just to make sure, exhaustively he teaches Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga, and all these other means, exhaustively, to make sure that Arjuna is not at that level and wants to stay at that level. If he wants something further, if he wants something more deep, if he wants something more esoteric, if he wants the higher truth, then Krishna will go on. But if he doesn't, the person can just stay at that level. That's why the Bhagavad Gita, people understand so many things from Bhagavad Gita, because there are so many levels being taught. But rather than teaching this upaya right from the beginning, he exhaustively teaches the other upayas, or so-called upayas. All this was done in order to test Arjuna's heart, to find out whether he would stop at this, or by seeing the faults of these other upayas, becoming qualified to be instructed in this upaya, the ultimate upaya. If he is taught the other upayas in a way just to test Arjuna's heart, then why do the Vedas enjoy them? Why are they also said in the Vedas all these other ways? The Vedas enjoin the other upayas just like people fasten a log to an unruly cow in order to remove the willfulness coming from egoism and possessiveness, ahankara and mamakara, right? Inus and minus, and give rise to knowledge of one's true nature, swarupa jnana. What's the true nature? Now, according to Vedanta Deshika, the Kanchi Puramacharyas and the Northern Acharyas, the true nature of the soul includes also that the soul is a doer, the soul is an enjoyer, like that. But the Sri Vaishnavacharyas, they put the emphasis on the soul's true nature as being subservient, as being completely controlled and subservient and supported by the Lord, and being like the Lord's property, like the Lord's slave, like the Lord's servant. That servitorship or that slaveship or that ownership of the soul, that is the true Swarupa. That's the most important part of Swarupa, and not that the soul is a doer or enjoyer or a knower, okay, which is spoken about throughout all the Vedas. So Vedanta Deshika is right about that. That is, the soul is like that. It's spoken of like that in all the Vedas, but that is not the emphasis. That the soul is ultimately the most important thing we have to know about the soul, the individual soul, is that he is completely owned and controlled and supported by the Supreme Lord, right? He is the servant, the slave, the property of the Supreme Lord. That's the most important aspect. That is your essential Swarupa. And even Gaudiya say that, Jiva Swarupa Nitya Krishna Das, eternal servant of Krishna, of Sriman Narayana. The most perfect Veda has enjoined other upayas, other so-called methods of liberation, as ways to moksha by such statements as, having understood the Supreme Spirit, he should meditate upon him, right? Offering meditation. This is a quotation from Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 4.4.21. Meditate on the self as all, right? This is another statement. This is from Mundaka Upanishad 2.2.6, right? Reverence the world as the self. Reverence the world as the self. Meditate like that. This is a quotation from Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 1.4.15, right? And then we have, in order to impede, reverence the world as the self. The Atman is to be seen, heard, thought about, and meditated upon, the soul, right? 87. This is Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 6.5.6. In order to impede and control a cow who wanders astray into other people's fields while grazing, people will tie a log to its neck. Like that cow, the soul is wandering lustfully under the sway of his egoism and possessiveness, his inus and minus, ahankara and mamakara. But in thousands of previous births, through penance, study, and meditation, which is attributed to Laghu Trishmati, Lagva Trishmati, right? When the individual is oppressed by difficult requirements that are physically exhausting, such as performing karmas and torturing the senses by doing austerities and tapasya, that lustful willingness will go away. The knowledge of his true nature, his dependence on the Lord, Bhagavat Paratantriya, right, will arise, right? For this reason, these upayas are enjoined, right? These implies that they're almost enjoined, these other methods are enjoined to get us sick and tired of doing them. And when we get to the point of being sick and tired of doing them, right, life after life, then we finally relinquish them and realize they're not the way. But if so, then wouldn't it be wrong to relinquish these things that have brought us to the knowledge of our actual swarupa, our actual true essence as a servant or a slave or the property of the Lord in this way? Wouldn't it be wrong to give them up then? Right? Because if these things are given to us to do and we've done them because the Vedas and because the Lord has taught them in Bhagavad Gita and because the Vedas have taught them, right? If we've done them and if they've brought us to this realization to give them up, right? Wouldn't it be wrong to actually give them up then? Because they have brought us to the realization. That makes sense, right? Then he says in 269, just as a sannyasi gives up previous things, if one who has attained such knowledge of the swarupa, knowledge of the soul of the individual self, that the real essence of the self is the property of the Lord, gives these up, no fault will occur. No fault will occur. No fault occurs when somebody takes sannyas. They don't say to him, well, why don't you look after your family anymore? No, I've renounced that. I've gone beyond that. I don't do any things that the grihasta does anymore, right? All those duties of the grihasta are no longer applicable to me. What does Krishna say? Sanyasi cha yogi chana niragnina chakriya. The sannyasi and a yogi neither lights no fire nor performs no work. The sannyasis don't have, they're not unemployed, right? They're not unemployed. They're unemployable. They don't have a job. Their job is not to be in society. Their job is not to cook for themselves. So they don't kindle fires. They don't perform, not only do they not cook for themselves, they don't even perform the upasana fire, the samhita danam fire, which they perform as a grihastha or as a brahmachari. There's specific fire ceremonies they don't do. They don't do fire ceremonies. They don't cook for themselves. They don't do any work. They don't have any job. They don't have, it's like, they're not only retired, but renounced. They've renounced society. That is sannyas. So similarly, the prapana, the person who takes the Lord as the only upaya, as the primary means of liberation, that person is a sannyasi from all these other things. He's taken sannyas from karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. He's given up completely the idea of working for himself, of trying to do anything to aid his own liberation, like that. This is what we call, it's karma, jnana, and bhakti sannyas, right? It's the ultimate sannyas, like that. It's the ultimate form of sannyas, right? And that's why it comes from the Vedas, from the Upanishadic vidya, the nyasa vidya. The word sannyas comes from the word nyas, right? Nyasa vidya. It is the Upanishadic vidya of nyasa, or surrender, right? And that's what it is, right? But it's completely against all these other things which are written in the scriptures, right? But it doesn't mean it's not a fault. It's not a fault that we give up those other things. It's not a fault, right? Just like it's not a fault for a sannyasi to give up the grihastha dharmas. So one who has entered into the last stage of life, ashrama, gives up the duties of the previous stages. It is the same for one who has gained this measure of ripened knowledge, such that he employs only the siddhupaya, the perfect means, the Lord himself, because these other upayas are contrary to the soul's true nature as the property, as a slave, as a servant of the Lord, right? Not as a doer and knower or enjoyer, right? Which is emphasized in other parts of the Vedas and by the northern school of the Sri Vaishnavas, by Vedanta Deshika and the Kanchi Puramacharyas. There will be no fault if one gives up these other upayas. One has to be convinced of that. If I give up these other upayas, karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, any other means of self-initiated, right, a path of effort towards my own liberation, if I give those things up, there will be no fault. There is no fault to me giving up those things. And that is described by the word parityaja, having completely abandoned. Sarva dharmam parityaja, having completely abandoned those things. And that is a vidhi. That is an instruction. That is a rule. That is a law that the Lord says, you must do that. Right. He reveals that since these upayas, these so-called upayas, so-called means, are included in another form, He does not entirely give them up. Okay, so now Manavala Mahamuni is saying, right, that these upayas that we talked about, Kama Yoga, Jnana Yoga, everybody's up in arms now because we said you should give them up completely, give them up. There's no fault in giving them up like that. Then people are aghast. You're going to give up bhakti, you're going to give up karma yoga, you're going to give up jnana yoga, you're going to give up knowledge, you're going to give up works, you're going to give up devotion like that. That's amazing. How can you talk like that? How can you call yourself a Vaishnava, a devotee of Lord Krishna, a devotee of Sriman Narayana, and say that you're giving these things up? No, Madhava Mahamuni says, he reveals that since these so-called upayas are included in another form, in a different form, a slightly different form, the mentality that we perform them in is slightly different, right? He does not entirely give them up, right? He does not abandon these outright. He does not abandon these outright. We don't stop. We don't immediately say, let me go to the forest and let me give up work. Let me leave my family. Let me leave my society. Let me leave my country. Let me give up everything. We don't immediately say that. We don't immediately say, let me give up study of scripture. Let me give up the study of anything like that. Let me also give up devotion to the Lord and take to what is non-devotion or whatever. Let me give up acts of devotion. Let me give up Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakam, Nivedanam, all these things. Let me give up all those things. Right? What we're giving them up is, we're actually just giving them up as a form of upaya, giving them up as a means to liberation. We're not actually giving them up. We're just giving them up as we're not putting our trust in them as a means to liberation. They're not the means. What are they then? He does not abandon these outright. This same adhikari, or this same qualified person who accepts the accomplished siddha sadhana, the perfect sadhana, right, which is the Lord himself, accepting the Lord as the means, as the siddhopaya, right, the perfect means, the 100% infallible means to liberation, after completely abandoning other sadhanas, does not actually, swarupena, by form, abandon these things, karma, jnana, bhakti, etc. He doesn't actually abandon karma, jnana, bhakti, etc. What he's abandoning is karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga. The idea that these things are going to help us to attain yoga or moksha with the Lord, union with the Lord, or liberation. That relationship with the Lord, eternal serving, loving serving relationship with the Lord, which is liberation, the Lord's service. No, those things, karma, jnana, and bhakti, can be accepted, but not as a means. As to how this is, he reveals. Karma is included in service, kainkarya. So even in liberation, there's karma, right? In liberation, we do service to the Supreme Lord, eternal service. And even here in this world, before we attain moksha, before we attain the Supreme, Paramapada, before we go to Sri Vaikuntha, we are doing service to the Lord. That service can continue, either here or there. That service can continue. That is kainkarya. That is karma. That's karma. So we're not giving up karma, right? Jnana is included in the manifestation of the soul's true nature. We think about our true nature. What is our true nature? Our true nature is a servant, a slave, a property, a piece of property of the Lord, right? So meditating on that, or reading the scriptures that tell us that, right? That is jnana. Bhakti is included in the desire for the goal, the desire for moksha. What is moksha? Moksha is service for the Lord. Our desire for service for the Lord is bhakti. Property is included in the knowledge of the soul's nature as it really is. Swarupupaya atnya jnana. Right? So all of these things, karma, jnana, bhakti, and property, are all included. They're all included in our understanding, right? That the Lord is the only means. The prescribed karmas, which he performs according to his own varna and ashrama, are performed, not with the idea that they are sadhanas, not with the idea that they will lead us to liberation, but only out of compassion for sake of others, thereby greatly pleasing the Lord. Thus, karma is contained in the service which he does to please the Lord. The subtle jnana, which Namawar calls nunar ivu, fine knowledge, and this is a quote from Tiruvai Moli 571, is that which illuminates the nature of the Lord after first making known one's own nature. As the idea of sadhana disappears, right, this knowledge is included in the manifestation of the soul's true nature. As it is said, by devotion, bhakti alone can I be known, right? So that's a quotation from Bhagavad Gita 1154, right? But as the idea of a sadhana goes away, of using bhakti as a sadhana, right, this devotion is included in the desire to please the Lord, right, which is something through service, right, through kind karya, eternal service to the Lord, which is something that must be present in the moment prior to service, right? The desire to serve, the desire to please has to be there in the moment prior to our service. The goal to be attained, prapya, just like one has to be hunger has to be present before eating, right? Nobody sits down and eats if they're not hungry, right? You feel hunger and then you eat, right? So similarly, you feel the desire to serve the Lord, to satisfy the Lord, and then you serve him. Prapati, which means choosing the siddhopaya, prapati, which means choosing the siddhopaya or the perfect means, is dropped from being a sadhana. Prapati also is not a sadhana. Understand, right? We've explained that, right? In the word ekam, when Krishna says, Mam ekam sharanam vraja, ekam means only me. Don't rely on anything else but me. Don't even rely on prapati. Don't rely on your surrender. Rely on me alone, right? Right. So prapati, which means choosing the siddhopaya, is dropped from being a sadhana, as stated in the word ekam. But such recognition of the Lord as a siddhopaya, as the perfect means, is included in the true nature of the soul's essential nature, as having no other refuge on account of the soul's extreme dependence and subservience and nature of being controlled by the Lord, right? On the Lord, which is atyanta paratantrataya ananya sharanam, right? Ananya sharanam means surrendered unto no other, right, but the Lord, right? Because he's the only one who can save us. If both bhakti and prapati are excluded from being sadhanas, what is one sadhana to the goal, right? So here, somebody may say, whoa, wait a minute, you're excluding bhakti, you're excluding prapati. This I thought these were the ways, right? To this he reveals, since he was taught a difficult way and an easy way to the same goal, it must be that the upaya, the actual means, is not these two, but the Lord's grace alone, right? So when somebody says there's a difficult way and there's an easy way, right? Since he was taught a difficult way and an easy way to reach the same goal, right? It must be that the upaya, right, the actual means, is not these at all, but is the Lord's grace alone. For the one goal, attainment of the Lord, he has taught two paths. The path of bhakti, bhakti marga, is difficult because it must be accomplished by means of its ancillaries, karma, jnana, etc., in many births. As it is said, through penance, study, meditation, etc., in thousands of births, devotion, bhakti to Krishna arises to men whose sins have been destroyed, right? And this is a quotation from, again, Lagva Smriti, right? The path of prapati marg, is easy because it is performed once and for all, right? After first ceasing from all activity, sa kala pravriti nivriti, as stated in Sarva Dharmam Parityaja, right? Right? Having completely abandoned all varieties of dharmas, or all other paths of effort, or all other upayas, so-called upayas. Therefore, the difficulty or easiness, right, of a sadhana is not of essential importance. Right? Bhakti is difficult, prapati is easy. Right? But that's not the important thing. What's the important thing in both bhakti and prapati? It's the Lord's grace. Rather, it's the grace, the prasad of the one who grants the result, that is the Lord, because of some such pretext, right? Tat yajena, right? Or 92, right? Which matters. It is because of that pretext, right? He grants it. Therefore, rather than these two, bhakti and property, the grace of the Lord must be the upaya. Okay, so there's a footnote here about what Vedanta Deshika says about this pretext, the grace of the Lord and the pretext. Vedanta Deshika often states that property in bhakti yoga, the sadhyopayas, right, to be performed by the soul are vyajas, pretexts. They are pretexts. They're excuses, right? On which the Lord, the Siddhopaya, the perfect means, bestows his saving grace, right? So they're pretexts. The Lord takes them as a pretext. This is what Vedanta Deshika says. Here, Manavala Mahamuni uses the word vyaja to refer to bhakti yoga and property. This usage is rare amongst the Tengalayacharya, but it does not really show any concession to Vedanta Deshika's views. For Deshika, the performance of the appropriate vyaja or pretext, such as bhakti or property, right, is absolutely necessary for the Lord to save the living being. For that is what propitiates vasikari, the siddhopaya, the perfect means of the Lord, and calls out his saving grace. Thus, Deshika does not mind calling them upayas. He calls them upayas because he says they have to be performed, right? It's both bhakti and property, right? And auxiliary causes, sahakarana, of salvation. And then to understand this, we have to look at Rahasyatraya Saram, chapter 29, pages 1077 to 90 and 1091. For Manavala Mahamuni and the Tengalayacharya, however, it is the Lord who may take it upon himself to use some such pretext, bhakti, property, or even accidental or imagined good deeds, yadrichya sukrita, right, as an excuse to save the soul. The initiative is entirely the Lord's, and once he has made up his mind to save the soul, the pretext or absence of any merits, the presence or absence of any merits or actions on the part of the soul is irrelevant. So for this, we need to look at Srivachana Bhushana, 381 to 383, 387 to 389, 396, and also to look to Acharya Hridayam, 107 to 113. So, even if that is so, isn't there anything that needs to be present on the part of the soul for attainment? This is he's asking again and again and again, don't we have to do something? To this he replies, what is needed for attainment is not to prevent or to request. Is not to prevent or to request. What needs to be present is to be passive, to simply be passive. How does the drowning man be saved by the lifeguard? By just going limp, not by trying to help the lifeguard, not by trying to resist the lifeguard. How does the baby kitten be saved? Not by trying to help the mother, or not by trying to fight against the mother, by simply being passive. Passive surrender, not active surrender, not cooperative grace, but simply causeless grace, right? No cause. What needs to be present on the Chaitana's part to accomplish the result is one, not preventing the salvation the Lord offers by one's own efforts, swayatna, and two, by making the request which facilitates the ultimate aim, purushartha, right? On the other hand, wouldn't it be fitting if he also had some good deeds? To this, he replies that these are not desired by one who is the upaya. It's not necessary for God. For God, on God's point of view, it's not necessary for you to perform good deeds like that. Right. The holy son Rama of the Emperor Dasarath said that even if one comes to him with sins, he will be accepted. This one, Lord Krishna, says that he must get rid of merits and then come. So before we do that, let's look at what P.D. Anandacharya says. So the Chaitanya who gives up the other parts and adopts this Siddhapaya, this perfect means, the Supreme Lord is perfect means, does not become one who has given up the other parts completely. How is that? The daily and special acts and rituals that he performs appropriate to his varna and ashrama are not done with the thought that they are the means to liberation. Instead, they are done due to kindness towards others, right? To show them as an example, and therefore lead to his pleasure, the Lord's pleasure, right? Thus, they are part of the service done to him, or kainkarya. The acute knowledge is that which makes the Chaitanya realize the nature of the Supreme, which then leads to the realization of the nature of the self. This knowledge, when not used as a means, belongs within the true nature of the self. The nature of the self, right? The nature of the Supreme, which leads to the realization of the nature of the self. Normally, we think about it the other way around. We first realize the self, then we realize the Supreme. Now he's saying, realize the Supreme, and you will realize something about the self. And then this knowledge, when not used as a means, becomes the true nature of the self. Once the thought that it is the means is given up on, that bhakti, which leads to the Lord, it becomes part of the taste. It becomes part of the desire, which comes prior to the service of the Lord, just as hunger precedes eating. As mentioned in the term ekam, right? The word ekam, property, which is accepting the Lord himself as the means, even itself is not thought of as a means, right? Belongs to the true knowledge of that self, that individual self, which has no other refuge and is solely dependent on the Lord. Therefore, it is right to say that the Chaitanya, the living being, has not given them up completely, right? So that's the charge by other persons is that the acharyas, the Tengalaya acharyas somehow are saying we should give up these other, give up bhakti, give up karma, give up jnana. But we're not saying that. Not saying that. We're saying give up bhakti yoga, give up jnana yoga, give up karma yoga, like that. Give them up as means. If bhakti and property were removed as paths, then what gets the Chaitanya to the goal? It is the Lord's grace, which is the only means. For the same goal that is reaching him, both bhakti, which is difficult, and property, which is easy, right, which includes all that is to be done and all that is to be given up, which is to be done once only, and therefore easy are advised. Because of the fact that without differentiation, instruments that are difficult as well as those that are easy are advised, it is understood that it's only by the Lord's grace, which uses these instruments as a reason or an excuse to give the goal, right, or liberation. That is the true meaning. So, still, is there not something that has to happen on the side of the living being for gaining the goal or gaining liberation? Right? There are two things that need to happen for that. One, not rejecting his protection by attempting to do things by himself, right? And praying for his grace so that protection leads to the service desired. Praying for the grace of the Lord, so that service, praying for that grace and service. Instead, will this work if the Chaitanya performs good acts? This is not desired by the Lord. The Lord doesn't need that. He doesn't need you to perform good acts. The example for that are when Sri Rama sent Sugriva to bring Vibhishana to him. He said, that is, Rama asked that even if such a great, and we just got this in the last class on Stotra Ratna, this quotation was here, Yadi va Ravana Swayam, right? Comes from the Ramayana. And Dr. Chiranayan was just explaining this yesterday, that Rama said when he sent Sugriva to get Vibhishana and bring him there, because Vibhishana wanted to surrender, he wanted to change sides and surrender to Lord Rama, right? he said, even if the great sinner Ravana himself were brought before him, he would save Ravana himself. Since sins are not the path to reach him, it is seen that even if one is a sinner, it will work if he desires it, if the Lord desires it. Sins are normally understood not to be the path. But, for instance, I gave the example also of Shishupal. In the case of Shishupal and other people, sins were the path, and they actually attained liberation by sins. So that just proves the point here that good acts are not necessary. Lord Krishna, by saying Sarvadhamma Priteja, asked the living being to give up good acts as well as bad acts, right? Which might be thought of as being required for the goal as well, right? Therefore, the Lord, who does not tolerate other paths, the Lord himself is the way, right? Does not tolerate other paths or other means to liberation. What are those other means? Those other means are Kama Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and even Prapati, right? The Lord himself is the means, right? Will not desire the good acts on the part of the living being either. Embar told Bhatta the following. Embar is Govinda, is the cousin of Parasara Bhatta, the cousin of Ramanuja. Bhatta means Parasara Bhatta, the son of one of the two sons of Kuresha, Kurtalwan. Right? Embar told Bhatta the following. The Chaitana, or the living being, can either look at the greatness of the Lord, totally trust the meaning of this sloka and attain the goal, or thinking that all the Shastras are on one side and this is on the other side, not trust it and fail. There is no middle ground in this. So there's only two types of people. There's either those people, if you really understand the Charma Sloka of Lord Krishna, 1866, and you understand all these implications, you either see it as this is on one side and every part of the scripture is on the other side. Every other Vedas and Bhagavad Gita, everything else is on the other side. And you have to accept this and reject everything else. Or you don't have faith in that, Sarvadhamma Prikita. You don't have faith in the Lord's Sharma Sloka, and you don't trust it, and therefore you fail. You failed. There's no middle ground in this. So let's go back to the main part here. Right. The holy son of Rama, the emperor Dasaratha, said that even if one comes to him with sins, he will be accepted. This is what we talk about Yadi Ravana Swayam, whatever it was. Yadi Va Ravana Swayam. Even if Ravana himself comes, he'll be accepted. This one, Krishna, has said he must get rid of merits and then come. The holy son of the emperor Dasaratha, who is called Rama, the Dharma incarnate, right? And this is a quotation from Ramayana 3:37-13, right? Has said, bring him in, even if he is the most wicked Ravana himself, right? So he said to Sugriva, go get Vibhishana, he wants to surrender. But even if Ravana wants to come, he can come too. He's so sinful, but even he will be accepted and he will be saved. Right? Since sins have no reason to be considered a cause for attainment, Pillai Lokacharya says, even if one comes to him with sins, he will be accepted. The one who is called Krishna, the eternal Dharma, and that's a quotation from, right? So there was up above here, there was 94. Even if Ramana comes himself, is a quotation from Ramayana 6:12-19. The context is Vibhishana's Sharanagati or surrender. Bring him in, the best of monkeys, this one to whom I have granted protection, whether he be Vibhishana or even Ravana himself, Sugriva, right? So then continuing on, this quotation about Krishna being the eternal Dharma, that comes from that quotation from Mahabharata 386:22, right? By his statement, Sarvadhamma Pritija was an order, which is a vidhi, right? Which is not an anuvad or something that's already taken place, but it's a vidhi. We understand it to be an order of Lord Krishna's, completely abandon all other forms of self-effort or other means to liberation, declared that one has to first abandon merits. So in Sarvadhamma, we understood was also Sarva Punya, all merits. That also has to be abandoned. So here he's saying Remember when we talked about sarva dharma, it means also punyas, right? So Lord Krishna has said also you have to give up all punyas like that, which might be considered so you don't have to give up your sins and you don't have to gain punyas. You don't have to even give up punyas or gain punyas, right? So because he's saying you don't give up punyas also, Lord Krishna is saying which might be considered the basis for attainment and then approach him, right? So that we do not mistake this idea that we need punya, that we need good acts before to approach the Lord or to get liberation. Therefore, Krishna says, also give them up. Therefore, the idea is that since the one who is the upaya, that is the Lord, who's the Siddhapaya, the perfect means, does not tolerate any connection with associates, right? With any other means, right? If you accept Krishna as the only means, that means you don't accept any other means, even slightly, even a little bit. Good deeds on the part of the soul are not desired. They are not wanted. They are not accepted, and they are certainly not needed. For one who is steeped in this truth, there is salvation as a believer. As an unbeliever, destruction. There's no middle state other than these. He makes this known by the words of a previous acharya. So he's a previous acharya. After Ramanuja, the next acharya is Embar, his cousin, Govinda. So there is a statement by Embar made to Bhatta, Parasara Bhatta, the son of Kuresh. If one engages in this as a believer, having desire and faith, there is salvation. As an unbeliever, destruction. There is no middle ground. One who is involved in this truth as a believer, who affirms that this is true because of Lord's greatness, who has delight in this truth and who has faith that it will not fail, he is saved. One who engages in this as an unbeliever and disparages it, saying, can there really be something like this that stands apart from all the other scriptures? He is destroyed. There is no middle ground between these. Such were the words of which are the most authoritative Embar or Govinda revealed to Parasara Bhatta, who was extremely learned in all the scriptures. Using an illustration, he reveals that one who lacks faith will be destroyed by engaging in this. For one who lacks determination, yavasaya, right? Engaging in this is like eating when one has indigestion, when you feel full or when you don't feel hunger. You shouldn't eat. It's bad for you. Even Ayurveda says, don't eat. Right? For one who is without sufficient determination to relinquish other upayas, if you're not determined to give up these other upayas, like that Uyakonda, disciple of Ramanuja's that was taking to Bhakti Yoga, if you're not willing to accept the Lord as the only means to your liberation, if you're not therefore determined to abandon all other means of self-effort and accept the Lord alone as the only upaya, as the perfect upaya, as stated in this sloka, engaging in this will end up causing destruction if you don't have faith in this, if you don't have sufficient determination, just as eating when one has indigestion will cause death. He reveals who is qualified for this. Those who are qualified for this sloka are those who have been disciplined, as stated in the verse, Vishnu Chitta has heard. And this is a quotation from Andal's Natya Tirumoli. It was Andal's appearance yesterday, Adipuram, right? 1110. So she wrote two prabandhas. She wrote Tirupavai and Natya Tirumoli. So in Natya Tirumoli 1110, she says, Vishnu Chitta has heard the great words of truth uttered by Lord Ranganatha, who has all good qualities. Those who delight in the Lord are beloved by him. If this statement becomes a lie, who will follow it? Perivachan Pillai interprets this as a reference to the Charma Sloka, where the Lord takes responsibility for doing the work of saving the soul. See Natya Tirumoli with Perivachan Pillai's commentary, right? And she gives the Sri Vaishnava Grantha Mudrapaka Shabad 1923 edition, printed in Chennai, Madras. Right. Okay. So Vishnu Chitta has heard the great words of truth proclaimed by the Lord Ranganatha, who has all good qualities. This hymn tells how Perialwar, Vishnu Chitta, the father of Andal, right, who was perfect in thought, word, and deed, was trusting his own ability to save himself. But while relaxing in a temple one day, he heard the words, Mame kam sharanam braja, resort to me alone, which were revealed from the chariot seat, the chariot seat, using Arjuna as the pretext. But Lord Krishna told this to Arjuna. Having heard these words, whose meaning is true, illustrious, and easily grasped, he acted upon them. Perialwar acted upon them. According to this statement, those qualified for this truth are those who hear it and who discipline themselves according to it. He concludes by revealing some holy sayings of the Alwars who follow this truth. Their words ought to be contemplated as the meaning of this sloka. So the hymns beginning, those who know the words, this is Tirubai Moli 7.5.10, and becoming a father, this is Tiruchanda Virutam 1.15, right, should be contemplated as this sloka's meaning. So again, he's summing up the whole meaning of the Charma sloka here with the words of the Alwars, right? The births which tightly envelop the soul, as if surrounding him with a cocoon. Along with that, the illnesses which ensue due to once he enters into the births, along with that old age, which strikes like a lightning bolt, such that he can't remain but a short time even in that state. And finally, the death he dreads, keeping him from staying alive even in that state. As these things the Lord removes, like skilled laborers pushing down a tall wall, finally he banishes, along with its tendencies, the great misery of Kaivalya impersonal liberation, of the bliss of the only the self, the isolation liberation of Kaivalya, and joins the devout souls with his holy feet, right, in loving service, eternal loving service in Vaikuntha, as they were decorative lines painted on them, as if they were decorative lines painted on his feet, right, and protects these souls so that they never again return to samsara. Those who know the good words, Mami kam sharanam bhaja and sarva pape vyo mokshayishyami, resort to me alone and I will release you from all sins, who think about this protection he has given them and have faith in it, will they become the servants of anyone other than the wondrous one in whom they take refuge, the one who destroys all obstacles? This is the meaning of Namalwar's hymn, beginning with those who know the words. And I'll read to you the translation here. Those who know the words, will they be servants of anyone but Vishnu? Not if they think clearly of the favors he has done for us by destroying illnesses and old age, along with ensnaring birth, cutting and removing the root of all of great suffering and placing it at us at his feet. The one who is touched, the one who is untouched, even the smell of samsara, being the opposite of all that is objectionable, grants the land of freedoms to souls who reside in all bodies. He banishes the manifold births which are alike by virtue of having sentient knowledge as their basic form, but which are dissimilar because of the distinctions between gods, men, and animals, etc., in order to take us who have been eternally caught in samsara into the service which the eternally free souls perform. He becomes a father who only acts for our welfare. He becomes a mother who only gives up pleasure, her own pleasure for ours. And he becomes our master who will take us into service, becoming all kinds of relationships in this way. There are 9 types of relation that the soul can have with the Lord. Disregarding our lowliness and his own greatness, he has taken upon himself all our responsibilities. In so doing, he has entered into us who are despicable and mingled closely with us. Oh, my ignorant heart, Are we omniscient so as to know our own welfare? Is he ignorant? Are we capable of bringing about our own welfare? Is he powerless? Do we have a right to do the work of saving ourselves? Is he unworthy, aprapta? Now that the one who stooped to favor us, regardless of his own superiority, is present, why are you lying in an ocean of misery? This is the meaning of the hymn of Tirumalasai Alwar, Tirumalasai Piran, beginning with becoming the father. And I'll read to you the exact translation of that too. Becoming a father, a mother, the ruling master. He destroys our various births, literally our similar and different births, and takes us into his service. This ever-free Mukunda enters into us and fulfills us. Oh, poor heart, why are you immersed in an ocean of mercy? An ocean of misery. Why are you immersed in an ocean of misery? Both of these are to be meditated on as relating to the meaning of the entire sloka, of this sloka. Thus, the following things have been stated in this sloka. 1, the particular dharmas which have to be relinquished as ancillaries or angas of acceptance, sarva dharma, right? The manner in which these dharmas are relinquished. In other words, parichaja, having completely abandoned, right? Which is an order of the Lord. The qualities, 3, the qualities of accessibility, etc., possessed by the one who is resorted to, the Supreme Lord, after relinquishing those dharmas in the word mam. The fact that one so qualified has no need for anything else, ekam, the Lord only, by the word ekam. The fact that this one who has no need of anything else is the upaya, is the only means, by the word sharanam. The acceptance, svikara, of this one as the upaya, as the only means. Vraja, right? Right, actually the mental acceptance, remember vraja means to go, right? But it means also mentally, right? To think, right? The fact that, 7, the fact that this accepted upaya is endowed with the qualities of knowledge, power, etc. Aham, right? What is his qualification to give us liberation, to cause liberation, right? And 8, the adhikari, the qualification, the adhikari who has surrendered the responsibility of his salvation by tva, right? Who has what is our qualification? That we give up our responsibility of our. That's an interesting qualification. Our qualification is we have no qualification. We give up the responsibility for our own salvation unto the Lord. And 9, the aggregate of sins that are obstacles for the adhikari, sarva papebhyo. What is the meaning of sarva papebhyo? What it includes, right? And 10, how those sins are released, moksha they are caused to be released by the Lord. They run away from us because of the Lord causing us, giving us liberation, right? That means the sins go away. He hasn't mentioned it directly, but the obstacles have to flee away before the goal to be reached. That was described. And 11, the freedom from responsibility on the part of the adhikari, the individual soul, who has resorted to one who releases him from those sins. So the freedom of responsibility brings us to the point of our mental state, masuchaha, that we have no worries, we can grieve not, and we have no cares, and therefore we should not grieve like that. So let's see what P.B. Anangacharya has to say. Right. So after that discussion about what Embar said, right, he says here, for one who does not have the great faith in this sloka, which asks for the sacrifice of all dharmas and adopts this siddhapaya, the perfect means, the Lord himself, association with it will lead to destruction. If you do not have faith, if you do not understand the actual internal esoteric meaning of the sloka, right, then association with this sloka will bring only destruction if you don't have faith with it. Right. Just like a person having a feast will suffer from indigestion. While suffering from indigestion, if you are not hungry and you eat, this is the example given. Therefore, this is too much for some people. Sarvadhamma Parityaya. The full purport of this verse is too much for those people who are attached to karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga, or even to property. The full meaning is they're unable to understand, and therefore it causes them indigestion, spiritual indigestion. Just as Andal sang, only those who listen to this and are steady in it are qualified for it. The meaning of the verse is that Peri Alwar, while listening to, one day he was listening and he heard Mami Kamshahambaja given by Lord Ranganatha on the chariot. Lord Krishna is here described as Lord Ranganatha, right? And Peri Alwar doesn't see a difference between Ranganatha and Lord Krishna, right, on the chariot, right? And he heard these words, Mami Kamshahambaja, and became steady by following it, right? The example of the Alwars like that. The Alwars who follow this completely have sung the following verses. We've already explained these verses from the main text, so therefore we don't need to explain them again. So thus, we have come to the end of Mumuksupadi by Pila Lokacharya with a commentary by Manavala Mahmudi. So do we have any questions or comments? I know we did a lot today, and probably we want to watch this again. We want to read over this section again, go over all the points that were stressed in this section again, because there are a lot of very intricate points. But at this point, do we have any sort of questions whatsoever?
No, Swami, I wouldn't say I have any questions. I was just thinking about the points itself, as you're saying, it seems here also that the Lord himself, there's actually no effort. There's no effort on the part of the jiva. There's no effort on the part of the soul. No effort on the part of the Lord also, in the sense of, saving the soul also, because as he said,
just like my phone, right? What if this is my phone? What effort do I have to do? It's in my hands. I own it. Yeah. It's mine. Yeah. It serves me.
Yeah.
So what did that Christian say? He's got the whole world in his hands, right? Okay. He's got the little tiny babies. He's got the prapanas. He's got the bhakti yogis. He's got the karma yogis. He's got everybody. He is a controller, complete controller, pervader, supporter. He is the master, like that. He's in charge. So therefore, if we just understand that, we're safe.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And then the Masuchaha, which gives, so much relief, because you're saying, well, Moksha Ishyami, it's already done, once you know this, and Masuchaha, then what is there to grieve about? There's nothing to worry about.
That's why. Although parichaja is a rule, is a command, is a vidhi, the whole sloka itself is an anuvad. It's already been done. It's already done.
Yeah, that part was also very interesting. That we take it as a video anuvad, but then you said that this particular part is the vidhi, but the whole thing is already done.
Right. And then, so that's why we have to remember that's ultimately the only way that you can feel comfortable about something. Right? What do they say? They say it's not over till the fat lady sings, right? They say it's not over until you see the end, like you're watching a movie or something, till we see the end or finis, right? The end. Until we see the actual credits rolling, we don't know that it's over, right? So until it's over, it's not over. So somebody may think, well, until liberation comes, it's not over. No, it's already over. It's over. The only way that you can feel totally without worries is to understand that it's over. It's all over. It's finished.
Yeah. So it truly makes sense that it is the final word. It's the Charma Shloka. And the other point about the Smartas, the followers of Shankaracharya, and the Tengalais, as what Vedantic Deshika says, that we're taking it that parityaja means to just give up all activity, and in the same way, well, we're giving up everything, but then it's combated that no, we don't give it up, we do it as seva, we do it as kenkaryam, that's it. But right. That's the only way that it is done. It was quite an intense, there's so many points.
There's many points. Many really points.
Yeah, I can't remember everything.
No, that's why we have to. What does Krishna say right after this? The very next sloka, he says, this confidential knowledge may never be explained to those who are not austere or devoted or engaged in devotional service, nor who are envious of me. So Krishna also explains this, right? This is the point that somebody who doesn't understand the true meaning, the true depth of the Charma Sloka, right? There's no point in explaining it to them. You can try to explain these things to some people, but if they're not ready to hear it, that's why Krishna explained, he explained first Karma Yoga, then Jnana Yoga, then Bhakti Yoga. People will stop at different points and people have different levels of understanding. And that understanding is coming from Krishna. Krishna is giving, Sriman Narayana is giving that understanding from the heart. From him all knowledge comes. So he's going to put the person at a certain level. And if that person cannot understand that level of understanding of the Charma Sloka, right, then he won't give it to that person, that understanding. And therefore, that should not be explained to those persons.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why Mumuksupadi is taught to people only after they take Samashrayana, after they've surrendered to the Lord, after they've understood something, right? It's not just taught to everybody like that. So those of you who are watching on YouTube, you may or may not agree with all of these things, all these points of the acharyas like that. But you have to, first of all, you have to be surrendered to the Lord, and then you can understand the depths of these things. Otherwise, as Lord Krishna says, these things should not be spoken of. They should not be taught to people who don't have faith in that system, because they won't understand. It'll be like, and even for people who have faith in Bhakti Yoga or Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, it'll be like sitting down to a feast when you're already full. It'll be like having indigestion and then eating. You will get only more indigestion if you try to explain these to people who are already full. If people are already full, their knowledge is already full to the capacity that they can take. If you try to explain it to them, they will just get more indigestion. So that's an important point.
And like Ramana just said, that the Bhakti Yogi didn't have that Bhagavat Prasada, so that's why. But the realization about the Lord will clean himself, because you are his body, you are part of his body. So automatically, he will do the job anyway, even if you want to, you don't want, he will do it. And that makes a little bit of the realization of why some souls at a certain point, he will give that Bhagavad Prasad to understand this. Because it happens automatically, just like how you've given the example of the director in the play. He's got
a plan. He's got a plan. His plan is eventually he'll save everybody. Everybody follows my path in all respects. He's got a plan. He's got a path. But, we don't know what it is. We can't guess what it is. We don't have to guess what it is. We're part of it. And we should just simply surrender to that. That's all. Yeah. But we need to have firm faith that it's already accomplished.
Yeah, but you can only have that firm faith when you get that knowledge, isn't it?
And you can only get that knowledge when he gives you that knowledge.
And when he gives you that grace, when you get that grace.
Right. Exactly. And if you don't have that grace and you don't have that knowledge, you will never have it. Not that you will never have it, but you won't have it now. And so we shouldn't worry if people don't accept it or people don't understand it. Then they, maybe you don't understand it now. Maybe you'll understand it later.
Because it's even more rare. It's even more rare than any of the other upayas. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Not me. Don't thank me. This is simply what the acharyas have said. And this is the understanding. When we see all of the quotes that have come in that Pila Lokacharya and Manavala Mahamuni have brought in to substantiate the meanings, right? Then we have to accept it. Now, what I would suggest is we could also look at the way the Northern Acharyas put it. What they have their arguments also. They have on certain points. In general, we're all agreed. We're all agreed that surrender to the Lord is the way, like that. And there are many other religionists also who are like that. They say just, accept Jesus in your heart, accept, Buddha or Allah, whatever it is. they're, you know, what do we say? Yam Shaiva, Yam Upasati, Shiviti, Brahmaiti, Vedantinaha, Bodha Buddha iti Pramana Patavaha, Karkiti Nyayaka, Arhan Jaina, Arhan Nitkita Jaina Shasana Rata, Karmeti Nyayakaha, Soyam Bo Vidati, Vanchita Palam, Sri Keshava Sarvada, right? Okay. So this is a sloka that is coming. It's an inscription on Belur temple, and it comes in two slightly different. They say Trilokyam Sri Hari or whatever, and there was this Sri Keshava Sarvada. That it's like Akasha Paridatoyam Yatagachiti Sagaram Savadevana Skalaha Sri Keshavam Padigachiti. That all of these people, they're all coming to the same realization, but they're coming up slowly, and they have different realizations. The Sri Vaishnavas, especially the Sri Rangamacharyas, have taken it to the deepest level that we've seen so far. Maybe somebody can take it even deeper. I don't know, but at least we understand now. You know, we can see all of these other people. They also have some realization. God gives everybody some realization, but we have the whole truth, nothing but the truth. We have the highest realization here.
It seems that the ultimate virodhi is the ego, basically, from all of this. And it seems that that's the one thing that blocks you from getting this, because only when you give up the ego, then you can understand you're totally own controlled.
Very hard to give it, because after you finish reading this, then you think, oh, now I know, and nobody else knows.
Yeah.
Everyone follows my path, Krishna says. So let's not disparage others. Everybody's on the path. Everybody's on the ladder. Maybe there's different levels. Maybe there's different steps in the staircase. Everybody will reach the goal.
Okay. All right. Jai Shri Narayana. Namaskaram.